Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we are doing the last of the ALA books from 2021-2022, which is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. Are you surprised that I'm here? Because I certainly am too. Earlier this year, I did a book review / discussion with Halo Moon Studios here on the channel, which you can check out. I'll link it at the end of this video if you want to go for it. And I didn't think that I would be reading any more of these books, but then the ALA dropped its 2022 list, and my goodness, Mist and Fury was on it. So here we are. Here we are indeed. So we're going to talk about it, if there even is anything to talk about anymore after it's been out for as long as it has been out, and that, 5 million people who have read it already have spread the good word of Lord Rysand. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the links down in the description below. There are a couple of ways to be featured. The number one way is through Lemwy, the monthly prompt writing contest, where I give you a prompt, you write a short story using that prompt, and the first Monday video of the month will be us going through some of those submissions because you guys are brilliant. The second way to be featured is if you are an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out. If you send the first chapter and the cover to the Fresh Meat feature here on the channel, your book will be read at a random interval to hopefully help readers find your work. And then the third way to be featured, sort of, maybe, possibly, is if you send in your book, I will try to read it. I don't know when. I got to clear out some of my backlog, but I am trying to read the books that are sent my way. So, and then I don't know if I'll do a dedicated review or if it'll be in a group of reviews, because the group reviews let me read faster. So we'll see. But that is an option that is hopefully opening up in the near future, especially with next year, now that the ALA books for the last 2 years are done. Then the third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they are available anywhere that you get books. You can find the names and the links down below, and you can even request them at your libraries. Share the love. With that said, let's get into this. Now, I want you to keep this in mind, because this is how I was viewing this book the entire time that I've read it. Feyre is trying to gaslight the audience for the entirety of the book and to destroy Tamlin. Like, he is not at all what this is. And it's funny because, so I've got an idea on my back burner for video discussion ideas, and it's how a liar is never going to really tell you when they're lying, right? Because they want you to believe them. Now, whether they are lying and they don't know that they're lying because they're delusional is one thing, but if somebody is actively trying to deceive you, they are not going to tell you that they're lying. So the ACOTAR book is from the perspective of Feyre. So if she's lying to you to get your sympathy about how terrible Tamlin is and how she should be with Rysand, she's not going to tell you that she's lying to you. She's just going to tell you how terrible he is and wants you to believe her. So with that in mind, as we go through this story, keep it at the front of your head. Keep their interpretation of all of this as if she is lying to you because she wants you to believe that Tamlin is the worst so she can justify the abuse of Tamlin, because that is what happens. This is a book of a gaslighter, and we are the victims. But it didn't work on me, Feyre. Didn't work on me. I see you for who you are, for what you are. And she lays it on hard from the start. It opens up with the angstiest of angst, quote, "Maybe I'd always been broken and dark inside." I think, see, look, if approaching this as if she's a gaslighter and she knows that she's gaslighting and she wants you to be lied to and to believe her, it makes so much more sense that she's like, I am a dark person. I am dark on the inside. I am evil. This is the rise of a villainess that is attacking the perfectly moral, perfectly fine court of Spring. The Spring Court, as some call it. Anyway, a prologue dream sequence plays where Feyre is standing in front of Amaranth, executing the fairies that she was asked to. Her soul is so dark, dark as the night, darker than the night. After killing the teen, an old woman is brought to her to kill, mask off. It's Feyre standing before her, and she stabs herself as Amaranth is watching, entertained. She's also admiring her own beauty as she looks upon herself and stabs herself. Quote, "Knew the blue-gray eyes, the golden brown hair, the full mouth and sharp cheekbones, knew the ears that had now become delicately arched, the limbs that had been streamlined, lined with power, any human imperfections smoothed into a subtle immortal glow." as she's having a nightmare about stabbing herself, she can at least admire her own beauty. That's gotta be something, right? Woken up from a PTSD-fueled nightmare, she's also cursing her new power of strength and speed because immediately we're victimizing Feyre again, despite her being all-powerful. That's also my new favorite trope, right? Is all of the abilities, the strongest person in the universe, but also the victim. Kiera did the same thing, made herself god of her own universe, and then was still the victimized of a Nazi armband-wearing user that she could have banned the whole time. Anyway, I think I'd have more patience for this if everything in the previous book wasn't set up to victimize Feyre as well as her now having all of the powers. So, there is that. Despite Feyre having reminded Rhys of their deal at the end of book 1, she is now like, it turns out that he's forgotten about our deal, lol, and I'm not going to remind him. She finishes vomiting, washes off, and then goes back to bed where Tamlin is sleeping, and she thinks, I did this for him. I gladly wrecked myself and my immortal soul, and now I have eternity to live with it. So, she's resentful, she's self-victimizing, and she is, blaming this man who is supposed to be the love of her life because that's what broke the curse in the last book. I forgot the entire quest of the last book was because true love. But never mind. Screw Tamlin. Tamlin is also having nightmares, by the way. He just also won't talk about them. He's kind of figuring that they're both dealing with the fallout of what happened in their own ways, and that, Feyre would ask for help if she needs it. Meanwhile, Feyre is just over here being like, I can't believe he's not asking me if I need help or anything. Not only that, but she's also thinking, I rescued this entire kingdom and everyone in it, but I'm suffering and Tamlin won't talk to me. Quote, it was easier to not have to explain anyway, to not have to tell him that though I'd freed him, saved his people, and all of Prythian from Amarantha, I'd broken myself apart. This is one of the things that they mean when they talk about YA writing. It's the over-dramatics. Does that make it YA writing? No, because it's got mature content in it. But when people say, this feels like YA, this is one of the things that they mean. I am going to have a video on that coming up shortly. So not only is Feyre suffering, but she is also bored in this house and she wants to go out hunting or return to her home or do something. But she's told that it's too dangerous for her to leave and do anything, so she has to stay put in the house, become a shut-in, go and start a Twitch, do something to keep yourself busy. She's dreading the prep for her wedding that's coming up in like a couple of weeks, a couple of months, because now she's engaged to Tamlin, and then eventually she's told that she's just not allowed to leave the house, but maybe eventually when she's married, she'll get used to not leaving the house, and then she'll just be happy about it. Again, go start your Twitch channel, girl. No one in the castle will let her do anything but wedding plan, and it is the most bizarre choice because she could have hired someone to do this, but all she's doing is just complaining about having to do the wedding planning. Tamlin goes off to battle more creatures and protect his kingdom with his crew, and Feyre is just like, and also says I love you to Feyre before he pieces out. She just nods and mutters back at him. That's absolutely not a sign of trouble in paradise that somebody should be taking notice to. But her wedding is coming up. She knows this. He's saying I love you, and she's not saying it back because she already knows that she does not want anything to do with Tamlin. She's not going to break off the wedding, though. Turns out that Feyre is also not inviting her family to the wedding and not communicating with any of them at all. She also says that there is no mating bond between her and Tamlin, which if that's what was important, then why are they even engaged to her to begin with? Because shouldn't there be the mating bond if it's that important at all? It seems that the High Priestess is pretty much making all of the choices for the wedding because it's so important that it be done right, since Tamlin is in fact the ruler of the court. And certain statements must be made to show his authority, to show his status and all of that, and she knows the best way to do that. The priestess' name is Iantha, and she also says something about having courted Lucian, even though he's not ever been receptive to her. We will learn that she is kind of a sexually abusive person later in this book. When Feyre is asked by Iantha if she is excited for the wedding, she pretends that she is. Then she looks at the tattoo that Rysand put on her hand, which again is another reason why he could never actually forget about the deal, because, hello, he can see through that freaking tattoo. The priestess Iantha offers that they get gloves to cover the tattoo. Bro, it's been like 3 months since the mountain. Why did you not get gloves 3 months ago to cover those tattoos if they bother you? Feyre pretends that she has so much shame with the tats and that she wished she wasn't reminded of it, but also, I can get gloves. Oh yeah, Feyre pretends that she is so ashamed of these tattoos and that she wishes they never happened, but she never thought about getting gloves or covering up the tattoos at all until like 3 months after the tattoos happened. And then she's just like, I'll consider it. So I smell another lie. They're keeping separate rooms despite how Tamlin sleeps in the same room as her every night anyway, and now they're having animalistic, ravenous sex. After the apologies for keeping her locked up in the house, he wants to keep her safe. She asks, who's going to keep you safe though while you're out there? The next morning, Tamlin is gone. Feyre asks Lucien why he's lied to her about the Naga in the woods, you know, the snake creature that they fought in the last book. Feyre and Lucien go horseback riding because Feyre is, you know, restless, and so then Lucian's like, okay, I will take you out, do some things with you so that you can chillax a little bit. Feyre also wants to go around the kingdom to see if she can help because she's kind of got a savior complex, and she wants to see if there's anybody that could use her help. Lucian tries to discourage her from doing this because he knows that it's not going to be a good thing for her to show up at these random destroyed villages, but she insists. He says to set her expectations low because people aren't going to want help from the High Fae's wife / fiance. Lucien tells Feyre that all these extra expectations are being put on her because she's going to become the wife of a High Fae, and so that's where all of these extra precautions are coming from. There's also the tithe that's coming up for people to pay Tamlin protection fees or he hunts them down. This was not a thing before. It also sounds a bit like a racket. Feyre says, oh, I don't want to marry a High Lord. I want to marry Tamlin. But we know that's a lie, don't we? Lucien tells Feyre to give Tamlin some time to cool off. He experienced her neck being cracked. That was insanely painful and scary, and at least she did come back, but it's been hard for him to deal with having seen her die. So he may be being overprotective, but it's not without reason. She's taken to a site where a bunch of Amarantha's captives were, because not everyone was stuck under the mountain. Many lived in the camps that became brutal grounds and did whatever they want. When Feyre gets there to offer her help, nobody wants her help, because her being there is just a reminder of the dark time that they all lived through. So they're like, please just go away. Go. Leave me alone. Feyre continues going through life with such disdain for everything. She hates the parties that she's going to. She hates Tamlin's friends. She's mad that she's caught Tamlin even smiling at parties because how freaking dare he, despite him deserving the parties with his people after being enslaved for 50 freaking years and people suffering under Amarantha's reign. Screw that guy though, right? Because Tamlin, it's not like he was being threatened to be sexually abused under all of this stuff as well, right? While his kingdom and his people were dying. It's not like she had only been there for a couple of months and then he sent her away so that she wouldn't be subject to Amarantha. And he knew the strengths of Amarantha after 50 years under her reign. But, you know, Feyre's the biggest victim here. Walking around with the High Priestess, they run into a couple of guests who congratulate Feyre on getting married tomorrow and how it's a fitting end. And she's like, oh, no, a fitting end would have been me burning in hell. She's so edgy. Oh my gosh. But also, she'd literally rather be in hell than married to Tamlin. And they aren't even married yet. Think about that. The author's pre-disdain for Tamlin is pretty staggering considering the book one was a love story! Oh my gosh. One of the guys invites Feyre out to go hunting with them and she doesn't want to hunt anymore, but she says yes. She wanders around some more and then looks at Tamlin talking to his friends and she thinks about how she doesn't even bother to remember any of their names because she just doesn't freaking care. She's just so depressed and uninterested and floating through life because she's uninvested in everything. Clearly, Feyre is keeping everything to herself instead of talking to Tamlin or anyone about it. She's getting married now and she hates the dress and she hates everything about her wedding and she hates the family she's going into and she's not looking forward to any of it, hating every second that she's walking down the aisle towards Tamlin. And you know who shows up? You would guess it. It's Owen Wilson. I mean, Owen Wilson dressed as Rysand. Yes, this does happen at the altar, by the way. Rysand is, of course, going to run off with Feyre on her wedding day. Feyre was planning to say no at the altar, though I don't think she was going to go through with that anyway, because she can't actually talk to Tamlin. Like, why, if you know you don't want to marry Tamlin, why would you wait until your wedding day to tell him no in front of the entire kingdom instead of telling him sooner so you could call off the wedding? Because Feyre is a megalomaniac who needed to be the center of attention to humiliate Tamlin. I see what you're doing, girl. Am I angry? Little bit. I just see what you're doing. So Rysand doesn't give Feyre much of a chance to say anything, doesn't really give Tamlin much of a chance to say anything, because Tamlin's like, you're not allowed to take her. She's my wife. And Rysand's like, we have a deal. Ha 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 ha. I'm taking her. And then they go off. So then they get back to Rysand's house. And he's like, you're welcome, from saving you from a marriage you obviously didn't want to be in, and from stopping you from rejecting Tamlin in front of his entire court, you selfish bitch. I helped everyone there, didn't I? Feyre is like really angry at this moment, despite how she has been wishing nonstop for somebody to come and save her, which maybe she wasn't, because we're in first person and never saw any thought of her saying that she wished somebody would come and save her. We did see her saying how much she hated Tamlin, though. And at Rysand's house, Feyre is feral, attacking Rhysand already and thinking about pummeling him, even though theoretically she is weaker than him. Then she's sent off to her room to get out of her nasty wedding dress that is disgusting, because we're being exceptionally mean about that. Probably because it's the Hate Tamlin tour. She then goes to her room, changes out of her clothes that she hates, including insulting the underwear that she was given, and then goes to bed to have some nightmares. When she wakes up to breakfast with Rysand, she likes the outfit that Rysand gave her to wear. It's not a dress, because dresses are for girls, and she is not one of those girls like the other girls. She doesn't like dresses. She likes trousers, you fools. Learn what not like other girls are like. Then Feyre asks Rysand if he could read her mind and how that bond works, the one that she got through the tattoo. Basically, the bond works that he can read her mind whenever he wants at any convenient point that is going to help the plot, but he can't always read her mind. Rysand saved Feyre from being married, but was like, you're gonna be Tamlin's wife someday, so you're gonna need to know how to read and write. I'll teach you while you're here. Feyre continues to be aggressive in every thought that she has, and then Rysand's sister Morgan shows up and they get introduced. Morgan and Feyre go back and forth about being aggressive toward Rysand in a way that tells you that they'll be friends again someday. Then she leaves, and now Rysand and Feyre are doing a reading together, but Feyre is fighting him on it because she cannot just calm the freak down. Feyre asks why Rysand even would help her, and Rysand basically says he cares about her and resents Tamlin's court entirely. He writes something about how she's good looking and she gets mad. Then she learns how to shove him out of her mind so that she's less vulnerable and compliments her reading skills. She's like, don't mock me. And he's like, you read better than I thought you would. He leaves her to work on the reading and her mental walls, and she swears at him. Oh yeah, because the mental walls thing is just so that she can block him out, except for when it's convenient for plot reasons, for him to be able to read her mind, then he will be able to, or when he can humiliate her sexually, but otherwise he's not going to be able to read her mind. That is just... She swears at him when he comes back, even though she's doing better. The whole time she hates him and is angry, and Rysand informs Feyre of the war that's coming, and everything didn't end with Amarantha. Feyre's wondering why Tamlin didn't take her to the war room to tell her about all these long-term wars and the battle games that are going on with the Fae, and she's literally only been a Fae for 3 months, so why would she get the whole history of why the Fae are fighting and how the Fae are fighting and the stuff that he didn't want her involved in anyway? She's been terrorized already with PTSD and has been having nightmares every single day since they got back. Of course he's not going to take her to the war room and tell her more about killing people. She's also been so distant from him that she'll barely hold a conversation with him. So like, why would he take her into the war room for that specific purpose? It's confirmed that she's good at everything, and Rysand wants her around because she got a Suriel last time like it was absolutely nothing, and did other difficult things with barely even trying that he needs those skills for. Then Rysand is complimenting Feyre on being the very first High Lady because she has superpowers, and she's like, oh no, I'm not. But what if she was the only one who could stand against all of the natal fairies because they all gave her powers and she is the most powerful now? And she's like, nah, not a thing. I am not more powerful than all the other Fae. False modesty is not cute, girl. Suddenly, Feyre is just saying that she's a trophy for a man and not a fighter. And this powwow of she's stronger than all the other Fae and she needs to come to power to protect her family, and she needs to tell Tamlin off because yas, queen, yas! It's all in you. You're stronger than everyone. Don't rely on no man. Don't let no man take over. Quote, I will say that once and only once, Rysand purred, stalking to the map on the wall. You can be a pawn, be someone's reward, and spend the rest of your immortal life bowing and scraping and pretending you're less than him, than Iantha, than any of us. If you want to pick that road, then fine, a shame. The shadow of wings ripple again. But I know you, more than you realize, I think. And I don't believe for one damn minute that you were remotely fine with being a pretty trophy for someone who sat on his ass for nearly 50 years, then sat on his ass while you were shredded apart. Or He plowed ahead. You've got another choice. You can master whatever powers we gave you and make it count. You can play a role in this war, because war is coming one way or another, and do not try to delude yourself that any of the Fae will give a shit about your family across the wall when our territory is likely to become a charnel house. You want to save the mortal realm? Then become someone Prythian listens to. Become vital. Become a weapon. Because there might be a day, Feyre, when only you stand between the King of Highburn and your human family. And do you want to be unprepared? Since when has she ever acted like she's just a trophy? She was told to literally go and stay in the human realm so Amarantha didn't get her. And she was like, nope, I'm gonna go get in there. Also, since when did Tamlin sit on his ass? He spent time looking for a way to break her spell curse thing. He can't help that the spell curse required another person. So it's not like Tamlin did nothing. He kidnapped her to break the curse. He tried to woo her to break the curse. He informs her that, she's a strong woman, so it's her choice to make. She has his permission to make the choice. Then he disappears. He later informs her that the reason he hadn't collected her those months before, when she was owed, was because he was fighting beasts. You're acting like this isn't something Tamlin was also doing by praising Rysand for doing it, but he was literally going off and fighting beasts to keep the realm safe also. She's then told to tell Tamlin her decision and return back to Tamlin after the week is over, because she's only owed 1 week every month. Also, there's some level of resistance from Feyre about breaking things off with Tamlin when she was literally going to do that at the altar! But she's like, I don't want to break up now. You just want to manipulate that soft man's heart. Back home, Feyre acts like Tamlin's a nuisance for worrying about her when she was literally kidnapped on their wedding, and she was like, no! Girl, she is just such a manipulator. Do you see what I'm saying here? She kisses him and says, let's go upstairs, knowing what that means, knowing that she was going to abandon him and the entire kingdom on their wedding day just a freaking week ago. Feyre. Tamlin gathers Lucian and they go over what happened with Feyre at Rysand's house, because Tamlin needs to collect dirt on his enemy and Rysand isn't trustworthy. Tamlin learns that Feyre has all of these abilities that will put a target on her back to everybody in every freaking realm across the entire kingdom, and so she's not supposed to be learned about by anyone. Tamlin doesn't want to train her in those abilities. He just wants to protect her forever because he's scared that she will die after she's died once already facing Amarantha. Feyre keeps the secret that Rysand is in her head. Tamlin's not going to let her go and do anything because it's too much of a risk and she is untrained. Feyre is like, fine, but obviously is upset about not being able to go and do whatever she wants. We're also forgetting that she apparently has severe PTSD, but again, she just wants, it's gonna be fine for her to just go out into the wilderness and do whatever she wants to do. Feyre is then still having nightmares and she questions why she can't go to war. She goes to the tithing event with Tamlin and oversees it and doesn't like how he treats the women who can't pay. She says, why are you like this? And he's like, this is the way that it's always been done. It's the way that it has to be. I'm pretty sure she was warned beforehand that this was kind of a normal practice everyone was used to, but she's too much of a soft heart to understand that this is the practice. She chases after an old woman who couldn't pay the tithe, and that woman is a complete dick to her. But then the woman accepts the jewelry that Feyre offers her to use as a tithe. I don't know why you'd respond to who you know is the king's fiance with rabid aggression instead of fear or submission when you know that she could literally kill you for this, but whatever. The lady accepts Feyre's money, and because of that, she will now always remember her face, and this will come up later as something that lets the lady help her out at a later point. Also, I guess money doesn't really matter when it's not actually your money, because what Feyre is doing is giving away Tamlin's money. Later at dinner, Tamlin is upset with Feyre for doing this, and she's like, what the frick is wrong with you? And he's says it's because she gave that jewelry away that he gave to her, and she said that jewelry doesn't matter to her whatsoever. She doesn't understand how this would hurt Tamlin's feelings. Those jewelries that he gave you are a version of his feelings. It's the way that he's trying to transfer, this is how I care about you. I think I'm taking care of you. If you go, well, it doesn't matter to me, then you're saying his feelings don't matter. Now, you can say you don't understand that is him trying to give you the feelings, or that you accept feelings in a different way, but to not even acknowledge that he is giving you his feelings in the forms of the jewelry, and that you don't care. It's just a specific way to smack him in the face and say, I don't think you care about me. I don't accept your feelings. No wonder he is upset. Not only is she giving away his feelings, undermining his feelings, but she's also undermining the king of the castle by going under these rules to pay off the debts for everybody who owes a tithe. She demands that Tamlin not talk to her like this, and then she reads Lucian's mind, and he's basically like, you go, queen, you go. And then she yells at Tamlin to get over himself and storms out, burning the wood behind her because she's got so many powers. She has unlimited powers. That's how many powers she has. Back in her room, she's panicking over what she just experienced with her new powers. She meets with Tamlin in the study, and then he apologizes. She apologizes, and then he gives her what he thinks is a beautiful gift for somebody who paints, because remember in the first book she always complained about her sisters not appreciating the painting that she did, how much she loved painting. She put all of her emotions in painting and even drew paintings of the people that she cared about. And so Tamlin has brought her this beautiful set of paints that she can just take around and travel with her to go on location and paint, because he thinks she can go out, she can experience some life, and she can do the things she loves. And you know how she responds? Freaking hates it. Of course she does, because it's a gift from Tamlin. Of course she hates it. Then she complains about how she can't do this with someone like him, and he asks her if she still wants to get married, and she says, well, of course I do. Be honest with him. Be honest with him. He is trying so hard. Notice, so the reason why she hates the paints is because there's red paint in there and it reminds her of blood and she has PTSD. She's not talking to him about this. He doesn't know that she has abstained from painting for 3 months because she has PTSD. She just expects him to know and then gets mad at him that he doesn't know, and then is like, no, I still want to get married to you. And then she's like, I don't want to marry this guy. I don't want to marry this guy. I don't want to marry this guy. She just wants to ditch him in front of the kingdom to emasculate him. That's literally all this is. Because she just thinks about how much she hates him all the time. There's no way that she's like, I don't know. Can you tell how crazy this story has made me from my response? Tamlin wrecks the entire room in a rage, and Feyre puts up a shield to protect herself. Once the rage has subsided, he apologizes, and then asks her to give him time to work on himself. Feyre agrees and has sex with him, all in order to help him, because apparently there is just no being honest with anyone around here. And now she's like, oh, maybe I should talk to him, because he's obviously traumatized and also keeps going out to deal with more war, and I haven't really been talking to him because I've been so selfish. She goes to find him, though this is still when Rhysand is there, and Rhysand then takes Feyre because it's that time of the month again, and so then they disappear, and she gives Tamlin a hug saying that she's going to be back. Back in the night court, Rhysand asks Feyre what's wrong because he notices her mood is down, and she's like, freaking read my mind if you want to know, because of course she doesn't actually communicate. And now all of a sudden Rhys is respecting boundaries, going, but what's the fun in that? I don't want to just read your mind and find out what your problems are. Rhysand mentions just killing everyone to wipe out the board clean and start over because this is frustrating and it makes Feyre so moist. Also, side note, I don't know how she can think that Rhysand killing a bunch of people is freaking hot when she's still having nightmares about murdering people. Unless it's all a lie. At the dinner table, Rhysand tries to get Feyre to talk to him about what she's going through, and then convinces her to turn on Tamlin for his benefit. He brings up his own trauma with Amarantha from the last 50 years, as if that's good enough to convince her, though now she's like, Tam is trying to be better. No, I can't turn on him. The next day, Feyre is going back to work on reading and writing, and it's more repetitive phrases praising Rhysand that kind of looks like POW brainwashing stuff. All of the training for like reading and writing is repeating the phrases of like, Rhysand is awesome, Rhysand is great, I love Rhysand, Rhysand is handsome. Like, that's all what the reading and writing is. And it's just, it's creepy. Let's be real. It's creepy. Rhysand goes away for a week and then he comes back. Feyre has taken up reading as a hobby. Rhysand brings food and then starts bothering her about talking to him about his feelings, and why doesn't Tamlin care? She says that Tamlin does care, and Rhysand works Feyre up into attacking him and says, good. Anytime you need a punching bag, I'll be right here for you, baby. Then he returns her to Tamlin, and Tamlin has sex with her really hard while saying he will protect her because, this author likes some feral. Tamlin's going off to war and stuff, and Feyre's left home. She reads more and says that it's the only thing stopping her from despair. I'm not sure why he's got clutches on her that she can't even walk around her own property, but apparently that's happening, or she's blaming him for that. But it's not different than when she was at the night court waiting for Rhysand to come back to from his warring as well, but she hates Tamlin for it. Tamlin's learning and seeing Feyre's powers, and now is talking to Lucien about how other people might want to steal her for breeding because Feyre is the most desirable of everything in the entire universe. They're worried that Rysand might not return her someday, but then wouldn't that break his promise/contract? Lucien begs Tamlin to just let Feyre train her for her powers, and he's like, no, because training might make people suspicious. Don't fight with me on this. Feyre gets scared listening because Lucien sounds like he's in pain, so she walks away. The next day, Feyre's wandering around when Tamlin and Lucien emerge to leave town again. She begs Tamlin to take her to war. He's like, you can barely sleep or stand to be around people. Feyre still fights him to take her to war, and then she mentally goes over how much she resents him for having died and having to take care of Tamlin, and no one saved her under the mountain. She literally came to the mountain on her own. He told her not to come. He sent her home to keep her safe. He tried to do that, and then she chased him down. He tried to keep her safe, and then he was enslaved, and she came after him, and now she's blaming him for that. She demands that she is going to go with him whether he likes it or not, so he makes a shield around the house so that she can't leave. She's going to have a breakdown being left in the house alone and panics. Morgan then shows up and carries her out of the house and over to Rysand. She wakes up and Rysand is sitting in a chair in the room that she is in, staring out the window, and he says something about like because Mor was the one to bring her there, then their treaty/rules weren't broken because he hadn't been the one to grab her, but like getting someone else to break the law for you is still you breaking the law. Like, if you hire a hitman, you still get dinged for conspiracy. Rhys is going to leave, and Feyre begs him to take her with him because she doesn't want to be left behind. He says that if you come, you can't go back to the Spring Court or people will die. Because, of course, this is her breakup song. Because she is like, take me. I can't tell Tamlin I don't want to marry him every time he asks. I'm like, heck yes. But take me. I'm not going back. They disappear into a portal and reappear in an abandoned house somewhere in a city, somewhere random. In this new place that they have arrived, Rysand says that this is their home. There are some nightlings banging on the other side of the door that they have just teleported into, and Rhys is like, this land is safe for you to explore, unlike, the other side over there, but maybe don't meet these certain people. Go downstairs and rest for a little while, yeah? So Feyre goes and does that. After she's downstairs, she takes a bath while receiving information about the night court, which she has now arrived in. A couple hours later, the guests that were at the house are now gone, and she returns downstairs to Rysand. She gets to wander around now with Rysand and sees the kingdom and knows that it is in better condition than the whole rest of every single other fairy place. No place can compete with the night court that Rysand has spent his life protecting and everybody else failed, because just remember this, Rysand has to be better than anybody and everybody all at the same time forever and always. It has been untouched by monsters and the darkness, and Amarantha didn't know this place existed. And here I thought he'd said this place was plighted. Feyre wanders around with Rhys as he buys things and is surprised that no one knows who she is here, right? Rysand takes her to a paint shop. Of course, the Night Court is also known specifically for the arts. It is the artistic court, and she gets overwhelmed and says that she wants to go home. She's also mad at the Night Court for letting other people suffer while they got away with relaxing and didn't actually get caught in the suffering like all the other realms. Rhys tells her not to be mad at them because they are blameless, and then asks her if she wants to meet his commander before deciding if this was where she wanted to stay. I thought it was too late for her to decide when he gave her this option, because he said, hey, if you come with me, you can't go back home. But then here he is going, hey, so before you decide anything, like going back, do you want to meet my commander? Because really, when it comes down to it, is Rhys is not going to force Feyre to do anything, because also that has to be the thing. As another step into just how Rysand is so much better than everybody else, or at least the thing that he throws into the ring to prove his betterness, is he explains how his two high commanders are women, and Feyre is like, wow! Now she learns she has this super rare ability to read minds, and she would be great for people that want to take advantage of others by using her because she is weak. Then he's taking her to this temple where he's going to fly her to the top to meet the other members of his commander group. While carrying her to the top of the mountain, he tells her a bit about his mother, enough that Feyre knows that his mother is dead. They get to the top, and the two of them make a deal to share information. No questions asked, no one questions each other, because Feyre is wondering what Rysand is thinking. He says that he wishes that he was the one who killed Amarantha, war might be coming and that peace might be hard to find. He'd dreamed of this peaceful place when he was a prisoner under the mountain. Then he pressures Feyre into telling him things, and she goes on about how Tamlin's affections for her were opportunistic and not real. Feyre is just in here telling everybody these lies about Tamlin so that they get on her side and think that she is a victim so that she can justify manipulating them into attacking Tamlin. Quote, maybe it was some shred of courage or recklessness, or I was so high above everything that no one save Rhys and the wind could hear. But I said, I'm thinking that I must have been a fool in love to allow myself to be shown so little of the Spring Court. I'm thinking there's a great deal of that territory I was never allowed to see or hear about, and maybe I would live in ignorance forever like some pet. I'm thinking. The words become choked. I shook my head as if I could clear the remaining ones away. But I still spoke. I'm thinking that I was a lonely, hopeless person, and I might have fallen in love with the first thing that showed me a hint of kindness and safety. And I'm thinking maybe he knew that. Maybe not actively, but maybe he wanted to be that person for someone, and maybe that worked for who I was before. Maybe it doesn't work for who I am now, though. Though if we look at this situation, somehow Rhys is not taking advantage of Feyre, despite how he started making moves on her when she was a prisoner, despite how he was forcing himself on her when she was a prisoner, despite how he made her sign that contract or got her to sign that contract for the forever tattoo on her hand when she was delirious and dying. But that wasn't taking advantage of her at all. And Tamlin was just a fake this whole time, despite taking care of her the whole time. And she had a boyfriend before, and now she's suddenly like, well, I didn't know what love was. I was just... Did she not argue with her sisters about how much she thought she liked that human guy in her village? And then her sister was like, he's only using you for sex, and she got mad? Like, am I supposed to forget that existed? But you know what? That's right. Just forget that Rhys got Feyre drunk every single night that they were under the mountain, that he got her drunk and had her stripper dance on his lap to humiliate her in front of everyone and to use her as a pawn to make Tamlin angry and upset because he was able to take advantage of Tamlin's girl right in front of Tamlin while Tamlin was a sex slave or a visual slave to Amarantha while she tried to break Tamlin's will. But yeah, Rhysand is the great guy over here. They go into the temple now, and Feyre is just telling everyone to shut up and respect her and snapping at everyone like she's got some authority, including Rhysand. She walks off with Morgan while the boys drink. She learns everyone in that room isn't a high fae except for Morgan and Rhysand. She also learns that this one place had been kept safe while the others were destroyed, and that they were pretty lucky to even have that since it was such a dangerous situation underneath Amarantha. Then we get more trauma dumping within this group about some tribe called the Illians who are brutal to their women. This is where Rhysand's mom came from. Her wings were clipped so that she could be bred and kept in captivity. The rest of the chapter is just all of the Fae talking about how they came from abusive backgrounds because they were mixed races or women, and how they lied to protect their own against Amarantha, and that they set up the Court of Nightmares to trick Amarantha so that they could keep stuff safe. But where they are now is the Court of Dreams, which is actually why it is so perfect. It is not actually the Court of Nightmares. Once everyone goes on about their traumas and friendships, they ask about Feyre's background, and she explains being the workhorse of her family and the only person from a rich person's family who doesn't care about money. Everyone is so quiet, and then more cheers Feyre on for how she has the power to do what she wants to do. Quote, let me tell you two things. As someone who has perhaps been in your shoes before, again, that shared bond of anger, of pain throbbed between them all, save for Amren, who was giving me the look dripping with distaste. One, Moore said, you have left the Spring Court. I tried to let the full weight of those words sink in. If that does not send a message for good or bad, then your training will not either. Two, she continued, laying her palm flat on the table, I once lived in a place where the opinion of others mattered. It suffocated me, nearly broke me, so you'll understand, Feyre, when I say that I know how you feel. And I know what they tried to do to you, and that with enough courage, you can say to hell with a reputation. Her voice gentle, and the tension between them all faded with it. You do what you love, what you need. Feyre is then just like, I've never had a female friend before. It's not like she didn't have options. Maybe if she wasn't terrible to her sisters, she could have had some friendships, but Feyre is also set up to be the only one who can actually talk to the scary Bone Carver that is now being introduced into the story. Like, he is super scary, and she's like, what's so bad about this guy? And Rhysand is like, dude, he is so bad. He is so friggin' scary. No one contradicts him, but Feyre is fearless and better than literally everyone, so don't worry. No matter how scary this guy is, no matter how powerful he may have been, he is literally nothing compared to the strength and constitution of the main character, Feyre, who will fear nothing. Rhysand and Feyre are leaving the tower castle thing, and he's saying how he can feel her even though she has her shields up, because this has more to do with what Feyre needed when they made the deal. He says that he would do absolutely monstrous things to protect his family, his city, and the ones that he loves. Rhys also says that he became Amarantha's whore in order to save his town, because of course we needed more victimhood, and of course we needed more sexual abuse randomly thrown in there, because trauma is a shortcut that people use to try to get sympathy for their poorly developed characters. I'm wondering how making Rhys Amarantha's whore even works with the plot of the first book, because Amarantha wanted Tamlin specifically, and so that was the deal, is he needed to figure out how to break the curse, or else he was going to belong to her because she wanted him. So then why would she be over here, number one, making Rhysand her whore, but number two, Tamlin was the one that was being forced to be around Amarantha at those events, which is why Rhysand was able to dance around with Feyre in the first book in the first place. So, like, he was not really her sex slave unless it was just secretly in the background, but, like, that doesn't make any sense either. This dude was flaunting how he was interested in Feyre the whole time in the last book. There was no leash on Rhysand. Even when he showed up at the party that Feyre was almost raped at initially, this doesn't work. At home, Feyre has a nightmare about Amarantha, saying that Feyre is just as bad as she is. Rhysand wakes her up and holds her hair as she vomits, calming her down in ways that Tamlin never did. You can't even pretend that Rhysand actually cares more about her, because he has an empathy bond. He just knows how she feels because of that magical connection. So her sickness then becomes his sickness. But then she goes to work for the first time and is too shook to do anything, so she goes home and sleeps for the rest of the day. Some chick named Amran is hanging over Feyre when she wakes up. She gives Feyre an amulet to help her out in the prison that she's about to go to talk to the Bone Carver, but she's not allowed to keep it. Then Feyre and Rhysand are traveling through the woods toward the prison. She gets there to the prison to talk to the Bone Carver, and everything goes along fine, just as you would expect, nothing gets in the way. They're talking about this mystical thing called the cauldron, and when Feyre asks if this guy knows where it is, the thing says, "Give me Feyre's bones when she dies and I'll tell you." They're like, nah, but they still trade info with the thing. They tell the thing that they are not going to trade it to those bones, and even without the trade, the creature decides that it's going to tell them everything that they need to know in the background on the cauldron. One of the things that the cauldron does is it can restore full power to the individuals who use it. The King of Highburn has the cauldron, and Feyre offers more about herself in order to get more information about the cauldron, saying that she was going to kill herself after breaking the curse anyway. It tells Feyre more about how to recombine books and like getting a human woman to give it power that she holds without trickery. And once all the cauldron information is exposited, Feyre walks out with a stiff upper lip, is brave, facing what she is going to go and have to do. Rhysand holds her hand because he is a strong woman partner, and then they're gone. Back at the base camp with all of the Fae, they're going over how they're gonna get the Book of Power. One way is because Feyre has everyone's power, she can find anything hidden by any of the other courts. And it's kind of curious how other courts aren't trying to get to her, because other Fae saw her come back. Are they just assuming that she doesn't have powers? Has something like her never happened before? That's some of the questions that I have. Also, while the big bad guy knows Rhysand and company, it doesn't know Feyre, meaning that she can go around better than the others. Feyre acts offended by them wanting to use her for this, even though she's given the choice to not participate if she doesn't want to. Also, let's not forget how angry she was at not being allowed to be involved in the war and not being included in the war stuff that Tamlin was doing. But now that she's being given the chance to be involved in this other stuff with Rhysand, she's like, I can't believe you would use me. Do you want to be involved or don't you, Feyre? Stop with the fake drama. This is one of the things that I really, really hate in writing or storytelling. It's just like this forced drama, this forced opposition to whatever is happening in order to create drama, and it's not natural to the desires of the character. It's just fake and it's forced tension. Anyway, They do want to use her home back on the human side as a base, so they're going to have to draw Nesta and Elaine into this. Those are her sisters. She goes back to her room, sleeps and eats. When Rysand appears the next day, he helps her prepare to leave to head back over to the human side, changing clothing, and he eyes her lacy panties. Rysand also reveals that he taught her how to read for his benefit, and she's like, oh, that's fine. Also, at this point, Rysand is on his knees for Feyre, and she's like, once he told Tamlin to bow, and now he is bowing to me. Was this all part of his game? The worship of Feyre is so over the top, it's ridiculous. Rysand finishes by calling her his salvation, because she has all of the powers from all of the courts they're going to go and steal from. Those places won't even know where Feyre came from, and shouldn't get any of the other courts in trouble like other thieves have. Now we're traveling again through the woods, and Rysand randomly brings up that Cassian would like to bang her, and she's all huffy and like, I'm down. And so Rhys says that he'll tell Cassian to go for it. Then they go back and forth insulting each other because freaking jealousy or something. I don't know, sexual tension. Again, it's forced, it's useless, it means nothing. So Feyre goes into the castle looking at everything around her thinking this freaking monster, but she's also thinking that she is kind of a monster because of her abilities. You'd think that she'd be more sure that she's a monster because of her nightmares, because that's kind of being heavily pushed onto her that she thinks she's a monster because she's killed people, but also it's just indecisive. Again, it's a lack of commitment, it's a lack of building that character, and it's just wishy-washy in order to give drama where it wants drama and then to remove it when it wants to remove it so that it doesn't impede other things that the author wants the characters to do. As she goes through the castle listening to the songs of the Weaver, she's thinking of how she wants to mercilessly kill Rysand, imagining the blood on her hands and the feeling of the dagger, but also she's traumatized from killing people. Again, lack of commitment. This is just to make her a badass, and I would like to continually say that just because your character is cool with killing people and thinks that it's, you know, has this emotional reaction that because they're mad at somebody, they just want to mercilessly kill somebody, that does not make your character cool. It makes your character actually really, really lame, and it kind of makes you come off cringy. There's a way to write it and a way to not write it, and this ain't doing it for me. Feyre grabs the ring that she was looking for off of the shelf, and then the Weaver stops singing. The Weaver has come for Feyre now. The Weaver is like the inhabitant of that place, kind of spooky looking. Cornered, she's being chased and thinking that she's a survivor. Gosh dang it, she is not going to lose now. She escapes through the chimney and throws a brick at the Weaver's face. She is rescued by Rysand and brought back to base camp, where she demands to be trained to use her powers so that she is not a sitting duck. Rysand and Feyre retreat to be alone, and Rysand traps Feyre in his memories of being assaulted by Iantha, who is the priestess that belongs to Tamlin, because of course we have to add more stuff onto just dissing Tamlin and everything in his court as evil. After she's introduced to this information, Feyre obviously hates that Iantha has touched Rysand. She is happy that she won't be a mother now, but a book chaser, and the bathwater is cold. Feyre is then dressing for the mortal realm, and Morgan is hanging around, talking about how oppressive life in the Nightmare Court is toward women, and Mor was born with all of the powers and everyone knew it. Mor got out just as she was about to lose her freedom and become basically breeding stock, kind of like Rysand's mother had been. She then says she came to see Feyre because she doesn't want her to go to the mortal realm. She also says that it's obvious how Cassian and Azriel are worth more than they realize. Then all of them fly off to the human realm and Feyre's house. Reaching Feyre's house, it's Christmas, but basically all of the holidays don't exist anymore. Feyre thinks about how 3 months with Amarantha had ruined her, so how must it have been for the others to suffer those decades? I bet Tamlin doesn't get this kind of compassion from her, right? She is greeted at the door by the housekeeper, who immediately knows something is wrong with Feyre, but then her sisters come and suddenly Feyre's way more fond of her sisters than she ever was before. Nesta doesn't want the Fae to stay there. Elaine's getting married, and then Elaine argues that it's totally fine that the Fae stay there and she'll get rid of the staff so nobody throws a fit. Feyre tells Nesta about leaving Tamlin's court because Amarantha broke Tamlin, maybe more than she broke me, and then it's time to introduce the new guy. So we're going to say, obviously, that Amarantha probably broke the guy, the leader, that she had wanted, you know, to enslave as her sex slave boyfriend, whatever. We're going to finally admit that maybe Tamlin is kind of broken by Amarantha after 50 years of this stuff, but then also treat Tamlin without any compassion whatsoever and be like, oh no, but he's just a bad guy and we're going to treat him like a bad guy. Can we stop? Can we stop doing this, please? Feyre then gets everybody into the house, and they're admiring how opulent it is and how successful her family is now because of the money that Tamlin had actually given her family to invest while he was taking care of her family while Feyre was living at the castle, because Tamlin, you know, actually follows through on what he says he's gonna do and takes care of people. But, you know, she's never gonna thank him for that. She's also, while she's looking at how her family was taken care of, she's also thinking about how he was blind to her needs. You know, the needs that she wouldn't tell him that she had, as she was hiding them amongst herself and didn't say anything. Cassian let out a low whistle as he turned in place, surveying the grand entry hall, the ornate furniture, the paintings, all of it paid for by Tamlin. Initially, he'd taken such care of my family, yet his own. I didn't want to think about his own family, murdered by a rival court for whatever reason no one had ever explained to me. Not now that I was living amongst them. He'd been good. There was a part of Tamlin that was good. Yes, he'd given me everything that I needed to become myself, to feel safe. And when he got what he wanted, he'd stopped. Had tried, but not really. He'd let himself remain blind to what I needed after Amarantha. You cannot blame somebody when you are hiding what is wrong with you and not discussing it. If you need help, go and talk to him, because maybe he thinks that you want to deal with it on your own and you don't want to be bothered. My gosh, Feyre. Introduction time, and upon saying Nesta's name, Feyre goes over how much she resents her dad for having to hunt and how she didn't want to use her family name since she was putting in more effort than her dad was, and she was ashamed of him. Sitting down to dinner, Feyre hates the food and blames it on her being a fairy, but the other fairies that she's eating with are fine, and it's just her having a problem with how boring the food is. Cassian lectures Nesta about how brave Feyre is, so don't be a bitch to her. Also, Nesta is checking out how hot Cassian is. The Fae write a letter to the queen of the area and then go off to their rooms as they spend the night. Feyre and Rysand are sharing a bed, and he's brought her special panties to wear. She calls him a pig and then goes to change. They talk about how Nesta and Cassian basically have chemistry and were already flirting. Feyre's like, my sisters aren't the worst. Like, look at your group of friends. Rysand is mad at the sisters for Feyre ever having to take care of them because she shouldn't have had to do that, so he is retrospectively going to be mad on her behalf, and he's going to start paying her more money, giving her more money, even though she is contracted to him. But he's like, you know what, you're servicing me, I'm going to give you money, just more money, just absolutely more money, so you can always be having everything that you possibly want because I feel bad for you, and like, magic. Feyre is taken somewhere to train, but she loses her temper at Rysand pretty quickly, so he leaves to let her do her own thing. Still, she very speedily goes to pack what she brought for food and whatever else she brought, and finds a note from Rysand saying, quote, I'm bored. This is just an enchanted letter that lets them text back and forth in basically parchment, and oh my gosh, it is such unnecessary garbage of like basically sex flirting. While texting, she's attacked by the auteur from Amarantha's court. Immediately, Rysand and Asriel are in the room and beat the thing for information for why it's there. Once it's gone, Feyre is like, wow, so Tamlin was right. I actually am in danger. She gets mad at Rysand for using her as bait and then attacks him. Feyre threatens him to never use her as bait again. Rysand apologizes and is like, sure. He asks her to use some ability that she has, and she refuses. He's like, let's go back to the house to eat and then go home. And she's like, your court isn't my home. And Rysand is like, Really? Really? You gonna say that, Feyre? Feyre writes a letter to Tamlin telling him that she's grateful for what he did for her, but she's not coming back to him. Then Rysand is telling her that she deserves a break from everything that's happening, and she snaps at him for being a baby. I want to go see the town. You said that the town is better at night anyway, so stop being a baby and show me the freaking town. Then she goes to give the necklace back that she borrowed from Amren, and the other chick says she doesn't need it back. It has no magical properties. Everyone is then out on the town together eating, and then some of them have eaten so much that they feel fat and want to go dance it off. Feyre and Rysand peel off, where Feyre's not so subtly asks about Rysand's relationship with the other chick that she borrowed the necklace from, and Rysand says that he just buys people gifts when he likes them, but they're not romantic. Not to mention, no one wants to marry him because he's too dangerous since everyone hates him, but he's also this special perfect town in the Night Court that has sacrificed, he has sacrificed everything for in order to keep it peaceful and prosperous and a secret. So like, how is he both the most oppressed and the the most disliked and also the most single, while also being the most handsomest, the most powerful, the most wonderfulest feminist man ever that sacrifices everything to keep everyone safe, but nobody wants anything to do with him. Something is not adding up here. Also, Rysand, because of that, Rysand is forced to suffer alone, because of course he is. Then eventually they go home, where Rysand literally texts with a magical parchment again, telling Feyre that her ex had a bad temper. But he doesn't, so then she should come to tend to his wounds, winky face. They go back and forth with flirting about licking wounds and licking each other and where to start licking, and oh my cringe, is it cringe? But ultimately, Feyre refuses his advances and throws the parchment into the fireplace while flipping the bird off at it, and then goes to sleep and has nightmares about the auteur. Also, when she's flipping the bird at the parchment paper, you hear Rysand laughing in her mind, because they don't even need the parchment paper to communicate anyway. They're telepathically, empathetically connected in a way that they already could. It's just dumb. It's just so much. So then Feyre is training in the yard. It's literally, it feels like fan fiction of its own story. Feyre is training in the yard with Cassian, and in between that and more insults, she thinks about how Tamlin is abusive and how he never really loved her and didn't try hard enough for her, even though he actually sent her away to take care of her because he didn't want her to get hurt with Amarantha. But sure, Feyre, Tamlin never tried for you. Oh my gosh. She just like aggressively goes from, oh, but he's trying and he's kind and he's nice and, you know, maybe he's a little bit damaged from what happened to him, to fuck Tamlin. Screw Tamlin. Like, she goes hot and cold extreme so fast. It's no different than she going, I should love him, I should marry him, and then, no, I don't want to marry him, and then, no, I don't want to break off with him, though. Make up your mind. Woman, make up your mind. This isn't cute. This isn't fun. Look, I'm getting frustrated again just reading through the synopsis of the stupid story again. Do you know how infuriating this is to see it in real time in 600 pages? The story that never ends. That's what 600 plus 8 pages feels like. It is a freaking story that never ends. It is a torture that never ends. I'm eyeballing all of you that do long books. Justify the length to me, because if there ain't no reason for it to be 600 pages, I am coming for you. This is my box cutter. It's also good on books. Don't make me use it on you. She also says, quote, yes, he'd fought for me, but I'd fought harder for him. Feyre, relationships are not a competition. What are you doing, tally marks over here to be like, there's 1 point for me, there's 1 point for Tamlin. Oh, 4 points for me because I just complimented Tamlin. Oh, yeah, but he gave my family money, but that's only like half a point because I hate him. Go live by yourself in Antarctica, Feyre. It's where your cold heart deserves to be. She screeches about how he never cared about her and only put her in a cage to fuck her after he got his powers back from Amarantha, and she goes, I killed those Fae. Rysand apologizes for not saving Feyre from what happened to her under the mountain. Then Rhys talks to Feyre about the darkness. It's not good or bad, and it can be either, pending on the purposes of how you want to use the darkness. He challenges her to use her abilities that are from him to see if she can. She tries, but she doesn't really peek into him, so he's like, go home and shower. We can try this again later. You can try to read my mind again later. Feyre flips him off again, and then goes and has Cassian take her home. Her level of meanness doesn't make any sense either. It's not cute. It's not anything. Rysand finally gets a notice from the Summer Court. They're gonna bring Feyre over so that she can look for the missing book. They're also thinking of what else they can steal from the Summer Court, because the king of that realm is young and new and likely doesn't have inventory of his realm since he was appointed while under the mountain. So, you know, Night Court are a bunch of thieves too, even though they are apparently also the, like, holiest of holy, the greatest guys, but also they're righteously stealing from everyone else because the reasons. They think about the final statement it'll be if they bring Feyre and introduce her as a member of their court, and it's decided that him, Amaranth, and Feyre are going to go to the Summer Court. Upon arrival, all of them are rude to their hosts in the summer court. This is so obnoxious, and I absolutely despise it. Like, they were the ones who sent the letter to ask if they could be let in there. You look ungrateful, and you look like disrespectful jerks to be acting this way instead of gracious to your hosts. It doesn't even make sense as to why you would do that, because you would want to get them off their guards, and you would want to ingratiate yourselves to them, but you just come in and you act like a jerk straight off. There is a long introduction that takes place here and gives you a whole bunch of new characters that aren't going to matter after these scenes are over. They talk at the dinner table and say something about how Feyre is lucky that Tamlin respects her departure, because all that it would take would be a letter from Tamlin saying that she was stolen, and they'd have no choice but to return her to the Spring Court. And this detail alone means that Tamlin is not the controlling guy that Feyre keeps trying to paint him as. Rysand is then like, "You're only here because of the sacrifices Feyre made. Technically, Tamlin also made them, since he brought her to the kingdom to begin with to try to break the curse." He then threatens Tarquin, who is the king of the Summer Court, that if anyone says anything to Tamlin about Feyre being there, then he will punish them, because let's not forget that Rysand is actually kind of a tyrant. He just pretends to be a nice guy. Tarquin is like, "Don't threaten me in my own home," and Rysand is like, "It's not a threat, it's a promise." I freaking beg to differ, bro. It doesn't really seem to matter that he's made this threat or he's been a jerk this whole time, and that he doesn't respect the king of the Summer Court, and that they're going to like finger all of his stuff until they find stuff they want to steal. Even when they're rude, they get full respect, even when they threaten and intend to rob. And I don't know how we're here or why we're here or why nothing matters. It is just like, why even bother? Why even bother? This is one of the things with like, it drives me crazy when I'm reading a book. Do not make characters do things and then the world not react to them, because all you do as the author is you train me to understand that there are no consequences to anything. Nothing matters, and this story is just going to keep going in whatever random direction the author wants, because nothing is going to stop it. Oh, you're rude to this guy that you need to trick? Well, the author is just going to write them as dumb as a box of rocks, or really just not caring and let everything pass, because nothing is going to get in the character's way unless you want to fetishize angst, which we've already had. The only reason that Rysand and his crew have been traumatized is to fetishize angst, to make them sad, harmed boys to fetishize. Otherwise, nothing as bad is going to happen to them. And every choice that they make doesn't matter, because the author is just going to clear the way and nobody is going to react, and there's no weight to anything happening. It's just whatever goes. Feyre's like, no one has any decorum in this place, and they don't even appear to be allies, but Tarquin is here laying it all out for Rysand and his crew and respecting them to the highest degree, and Feyre is just like, no wonder immortality never gets dull, because everybody throws out all of these awesome amenities, and then everyone gets to chill and smile and move on, because of course everything's fine, she's fine. Given a suite in the castle, Rysand is talking to Feyre about how Tarquin obviously is lusting after her and wants to know how much power Feyre has. Rysand tells Feyre to get the book without getting caught, so of course the first thing that she jumps to is, what if I fuck him for it instead? Lol, because also one of the favorite things to do in books like this, where it's a power fantasy, where it's a female fantasy, where nothing makes freaking any sense, is the sexual humiliation of the other characters, especially the main love interest. It is a constant taunting of the other love interest, and it is so immature. Like, I don't know how else to describe this when it's constantly like, I want to humiliate, especially sexually humiliate, the leading love interest. Constantly. In every single one of these. If you look at The Pawn and the Puppet, it did the same thing with Skylena in that. If you look at, I know that Swanee did this. Let's just say I'm very familiar with this sort of trope, and it's so annoying, and it is so immature, and I am also sick of just constantly at each other's throats, and this is supposed to be romantic, but they're fighting all the time unless they want to fuck. Like, just stop it. Just stop. It's not cute. And obviously, I'm not telling you to stop. You don't have to stop. It's your story. You can do whatever you want, but it's annoying, okay? It's annoying, it's disgusting, it's stupid. Moving on. And obviously, despite Feyre saying that, because everybody in the situation is so incredibly immature that they can't just say, no, I don't like that, don't do that, because I have feelings for you, they argue, or Rysand is like, fine, go and fuck him, and I will go and fuck somebody else. Just shut your dang mouth. Shut your dang mouth. You horny bastards. Rysand asks if Feyre would go back to Tamlin, and she says... Rysand asks Feyre if she would go back to Tamlin and says that he'd prefer that she go back than a war break out. Feyre wants to be the master of herself and master of everything. Rysand says that Tamlin locked Feyre up because he knew how valuable she was. Feyre is now arguing that, no, Tamlin loved her, when previously she was complaining that all Tamlin wanted to do was fuck her, because every chapter just kind of changes whatever Feyre actually thinks, depending on who she's trying to manipulate. That's really what this is whether she's trying to manipulate the audience or whoever she's trying to talk to in the scene, she changes what she's saying. Quote, he locked you up because he knew, the bastard knew what a treasure you are, that you are worth more than land and gold or jewels. He knew and wanted to keep you all to himself. The words hit me, even as they soothed some jagged pieces of my soul. He does love me, Rysand. The issue isn't whether he loved you, it's how much. Too much. Love can be a poison. This feels like an I'm 14 and I'm deep moment, but moving on. The next day, she meets with Tarkin and talks about how the human world is more about the haves and the have-nots than the fairy world, and that she was left on her own to survive. Tarkin basically says, our scale isn't in money because here is blood purity / racial status. The lowest high fae has more rights than the wealthiest lesser fairy, and it's just them following traditions, though he wants to put a stop to it. Feyre sees no manipulation in this person, and now she's starting to question if she could steal from him because he doesn't seem like such a bad guy. So, like, can she actually justify theft? I'm not sure. This should have all started with all of them showing respect for one another from the beginning rather than being rude as frick when they first appeared. Now both Rysand and Feyre are flirting with different people in this court and getting jealous of each other's targets because they're children. Feyre then realizes how Rysand never seduced her, just teased and taunted her. And she's not just broken, but unhappy. Very unhappy and lonely. She wants peace, but not as a cage, and she's miserable and unhappy. With this new realization, she excuses herself to be alone. When she rejoins the other at the docks later, she notices that Rysand is not there, and neither is the woman who he had been flirting with. So she's got ideas of where he might be. The next day, Feyre is thinking about how upset she is that Rysand would sleep with somebody that isn't her. She's hoped that he was interested in her in the ways that she may be interested in him, and now she doesn't want to see him when he comes to breakfast because it'll just confirm what she doesn't want to know. She's now dead in the eyes and not smiling, not looking at Rysand or his companion because she is so hurt, even though she doesn't speak to anybody about anything. She is a child. Tarkin later gives Feyre a gift for not laughing at his ideas about breaking down the barrier class because apparently that's the first time that nobody's ever laughed at him for mentioning that. I guess that's good guy coding because he's not a racist. Then he asks Feyre to be his ally with all of the courts in the human realms. He asks her questions about Tamlin, if she's Rysand's pet, and if she really has been locked away and saved by Rysand. Then he takes her on a tour of the castle until she is bored. When she returns to her room, Rysand is there laying on her bed, and she starts out by insulting him, also asking about the chick that he was courting. Is he serious? Is he really here with his dick smelling like some other girl? Let's not go there. But you know what she doesn't? You know what she doesn't do? She doesn't tell him her honest feelings. I don't get the point of him courting someone else when Feyre is the one who is looking for the book, unless he actually wants to sleep with somebody else. But, you know, theoretically, we're going to be told that Feyre is his mate, and he knows that Feyre is his mate, but he's not acting like it this whole time, because why? Feyre's immediately shooting off mad. You fucked her for information, huh? When she was the one taunting Rysand that she was going to sleep with Tarquin in order to get the book. But now she's jealous, though she goes, I'm not jealous. And he says, you ever think about how it might make me feel to flirt with someone I don't care about? How it makes me feel about myself? Because we are going to compete now with each other's traumas or the situation that each other is in, or the choices that we make. Rysand, you didn't have to do this. Clearly, you didn't have to do this. She is the one courting somebody to get the book. Just don't. Oh, and then Rysand says that he didn't sleep with that woman even though he wanted to, but he did get jealous of Feyre smiling at Tamlin. So, like, did he just say that, do you even know how it makes me feel to do things that I don't want to do? But then he immediately goes, oh, but I did actually want to sleep with that woman, but I didn't. The two of them make up, drink a toast together toward dreams. Feyre wanders around and practices her magic and judges this realm. She then spends some time with Tarkin and infiltrates his mind for answers. Feyre feels a little bad about being so intrusive, but now that they know where the book is, it it's fine and she can just go ahead and do it and she doesn't feel so bad. Amarana's gonna girl boss eat people, though. I don't even remember what that note means. It has been so long since I read this book. It has been so long. Feyre is then being shown around the town by Tarquin, thinking about how she's gonna steal from him for his own good. She's not impressed with the enthusiasm of the greetings of his people are giving her, which isn't very surprising considering how much she hated Tamlin and all of his friends back when she was at the realm getting ready to marry him. She doesn't care about literally anybody but herself and whatever she wants. Quote, "That's what I've told myself over and over again as we walked through the city, as I endured the greetings of his people. Perhaps not as joyous as those in Valeris, but a tentative, hard-won warmth. People who had endured the worst and tried now to move beyond it." She needs to not be in charge of people because she would be such a terrible leader. She would become a tyrant overnight and just be like, "You're so annoying. Death. You're so annoying. Death." All of them. Feyre is returned to her home by Tarquin, and then her, Amran, and Rhysand go off to steal the magic book. Feyre transforms into Tarquin during this thing, but you can't fool a magic lock with a fake disguise. And so then the chamber shuts, and they still get through it just fine, though. Don't think that there is any danger involved in this because it's all magic. As Amran and Feyre are drowning, the water wraith thing from before that Feyre gave money at the beginning of the book comes in and saves them from drowning and says that the debt is now repaid. They go back to Rhysand and he is like, "You guys set off every booby trap in that place and I've been taking out all of the guards." They disappear back into the base where Feyre opens the book and it's written in some ancient language that she can't understand. They plan to use Feyre some more for their plan here. The Fae are also laughing that she has a better heart than the rest of them all because she has a human heart and a Fae body, and humans just have better hearts than Fae, who are creatures of whatever. I don't know. She's not cared about anybody so far. What heart? After she showers, they all sit down and Amran tells a story of what they escaped to get the book while Feyre just sits there with Rhysand staring at her. Also, should be noted that Rhysand apparently has asked about the book's health, but didn't care as much about Feyre when she came out almost drowned. The next morning, Amran and the book are gone. She gets to spend the day alone and is reading when she eventually goes up onto the roof later to read and watch the sunset and finds Rhysand there with his wings out. He's like, "I didn't want to attack you guys for this book." He's like, "I didn't want to attack that guy for this book. I think that he wanted to be my friend, and that never happens." So he's just disappointed that he was having a good time with Tarquin, but now he robbed Tarquin, and the safe went off, and he can't be friends with Tarquin anymore. Doesn't he have a whole bunch of friends in, like, his troop, or does his troop of people not really count as his friends? They're just his subordinates. Apparently, there is now a bounty on everyone's head because Rhysand forgot to kill a couple of people or wipe their minds out, and instead just knocked people out so that the guards would remember what they did. Great leadership there, Rhysand. Now he's moping around because he can't return to the Summer Court, and the Summer Court hates him. Feyre is giving him a hard time and talking about flirting and wearing lacy panties for the guy that they just pissed off, because this is definitely how you comfort people. That's right. She's like, "Well, you might have pissed off Tarquin, but I could go over to his court in panties and, like, flirt with him and, like, maybe sleep with him and then maybe get him on my side, and then maybe he will stop hating you. Doesn't that sound like a great idea, Rhysand? Won't that totally not make you feel upset to hear that?" Quote, "Someone thinks mighty high of herself. Why shouldn't I? You seem to have difficulty not staring at me day and night." There it was, a kernel of truth and a question. "Am I supposed to deny?" he drawled, but something sparked in his eyes. "That I find you attractive?" "You never said it." "I've told you many times, and I quite frequently, how attractive I find you." I shrugged, even though I thought all of those times when I'd dismissed them as teasing compliments and nothing more. "Well, maybe you should do a better job of it." I cannot stand this woman. Also, Rhysand has confirmed that he's a cuck, but let's go through this really quickly. So he says that she is attractive and that makes him jealous, and she's like, and then she's like, "Well, if I'm attractive, why don't I just go and seduce people in my panties?" And he's like, "Wow, don't you have an ego?" And she's like, "Well, of course I have an ego. I'm a freaking hottie. And how could I not have an ego with how you stare at me?" And he's like, "I find you attractive. I've told you that you're attractive." And she's like, "Well, why haven't you told me I'm attractive?" He's like, What the freak? I've told you so many times that you're attractive. Well, tell me I'm attractive better. What is more clear to you than him asking you to come and lick his wounds at nighttime? This is such fake garbage in order to force sexual tension and stop the characters from getting together. Because there are so many books that are like this, where the entire tension of the entire book, because they don't know how to write a relationship of people being together and then like doing things together. So they make them be at each other's throats, but heavily sexually attracted to one another, constantly flirting, but constantly also fighting. But they're also into each other the whole time. And this is just sustained the whole time in a way it makes absolutely no sense, and it is so annoying. It reminds me of when, in freaking Guns and Smoke, when Jesse said that he loved Bonnie, and Bonnie was like, no, you don't. And Jesse was just like, what am I supposed to tell you to prove that I love you? I don't know, Jesse. Love me. Read better books with established relationships. I've realized I really like writing established relationships, and I also like writing people working as a team. And, you know, the tension and the difficulty comes from external forces, and relationships get to work together instead of against one another. And I have so many of those going on, and some of the stuff that I'm working on in the future are going to be those things. And I know that especially with Joey and Jag, is Joey is working against herself, which is putting an issue with her and Jag, but they're not at each other's throats. There's no disagreement of one of them thinking the other one hates them. It's just Joey thinking that Jag is going to leave and then having self-worth issues. But otherwise, it is not this. This is the most obnoxious thing that I can ever read again and again and again for 600 pages, waterboarding me with fake drama. Quote, his pupils flared. Gone was the quiet sadness, the isolated guilt, only that lethal focus on me, on my mouth, on the bob of my throat as I tried to keep my breathing even. He said, slow and soft, why don't we go down to the store right now, Feyre, so you can try on those lacy little things, so I can help you pick out which ones to send Tarquin. However, before the two of them can go off to pick out panties for Feyre, Asriel comes to talk to Rhysand, so Feyre goes away, where she has a fantasy of dressing in panties for Rhysand, where they ask the shopkeeper to leave so that he can rail her in the boutique changing room. She then realizes that this is a projected fantasy from Rhysand as he's giggling through her hand tattoo, and she curses at him because, yeah, he can, one, project things into her mind, and then two, apparently that's not like mental molestation or something, because he has just now forced sexual thoughts into her head. Like, did you ask for them, Feyre, or did you want those? Did you not want those? Was that, if you didn't want those thoughts, is that not sexual molestation of the mind to like project a sexual scene, a graphic sexual scene into your head? Is that not worse than anything Tamlin has done to you? You tell me in the comments below. Like, grade Rhysand's behavior for this, because I need some help here. So later, Feyre is eating with Rhysand's sister, Mor, and she tells her about her vision, and Mor laughs about it. Why are you talking to a sibling about a sexual situation with their other sibling? Whatever. It doesn't really matter. Bad time where she wakes up in the middle of the night feeling something for Rhysand, and then she goes to his room and wakes him up because he's having a delusional nightmare. She never tried to help Tamlin with this when he was having delusional nightmares and was like, his claws were coming out and he was obviously freaking out, but she will help Rhysand. She comforts him, thinking about how she wishes someone would have done this for her for the longest time, and then she leaves. The next morning, she gets a letter from Rhysand saying, thanks for comforting me. Then Feyre asks what his tattoos mean and then calls him dramatic when he tells her. She's also brought blood up for Amran to eat because that's apparently what Amran's diet is made up of. Then she's just hanging out, training, waiting to hear from the Queen of the Earth Realm. Amran is trying to relearn the ancient language of that book, and Cassian is getting into it when he visits Nesta and then being mean with Feyre when they're training together. Also, apparently Rhysand is, quote, grossly overpaying Feyre for just existing. Not that it matters because he's buying all of her stuff anyway, so like, why does she need money? I don't really know. Also, she never appreciated what Tamlin did for her family. We saw that earlier. She doesn't care about it now, but she thinks that Rhysand is the greatest person ever for giving her all of this money. She's texting Rhysand again, and he asks her what she wants now before She's texting Rysand again, and he asks her what she wants now for herself, and she's like, well, I used to paint, but that part of me is dead now, so I don't know if I have any hobbies or personality left, you know? Sometimes the one part of your personality that you might have had maybe once, which was just there to show that you weren't like your sisters, and that they didn't appreciate you, well, once that doesn't give you any sympathy anymore, you kind of lose that part of yourself. She asks if he'd always wanted to be a High Lord, and Rhys confirms that he did because he wanted to stop bad men like his dad from being the leadership. Then Feyre compares Rysand to Tamlin, pretending Tamlin never went to bat for his kingdom. Are you joking? Feyre, the propagandist. Oh my gosh. Eventually, they get word from the Earth Queens that they are ready to meet with Feyre, and everyone packs up and dresses nicely and waits, also thinking of the special demands that the Queen made within the letters, which include which rooms to meet in and everything when the Queens get there. Meeting with the Earth Queens, seems like the Queens are willing to allow everyone in this small village to die in a war if it means the others will survive. I don't understand why the Queen isn't having the humans flee, and also she's like, the Fae should defend this human town since the things that are going to attack them is their fault. They've killed humans before. Feel guilty? Then take care of the ones that are left. But, you know, you're also allowing a bunch of innocent people to die and you're not taking care of them. So you can't blame and you can't like call the Fae bad people if you're also just going to let people die. Additionally, what comes out here is how everyone must literally be beyond worse than Rysand and Rysand/Feyre are the only ones who are allowed to care about life. Again, the both of them are the good ones in order to justify their immorality that they keep showing again and again in how they treat other people. Rysand berates the Queens before Mor assists him on how she knows better than them. The Queens shouldn't be dismissing Feyre. They want the book that the Queens were given as part of their treaty, blah, 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 and I don't understand why they won't cooperate other than it's obvious that they want people to die. But tell me how this benefits the Queens and the kingdom to let an entire village of people die in order to show up the Fae. Because it's people dying is not going to hurt the Fae. It's only going to hurt the human queens. At this point, the queens are just evil. Like, they're not smart. It makes no sense. It's just evil. Hashtag Pioned the freaking Fae, I guess. Also should be noted in this meeting with the queens, just like how it went with Tarqueen, Feyre and the Fae never actually tried to humble themselves or work with the queens. They just demanded what they wanted, and when they didn't get it, they berated the queens, just like abusive spouses or, you know, nice guys or whatever. There is no respect shown whatsoever. There is no working as a team. There is no, like, let's be allies. It's, you do as we say. No? Well, you're a dumb witch. Got him. It then comes out that this older fairy/human couple that fell in love and supposedly died in the war were actually alive on this island somewhere, living in harmony with their human fae family in a commune thing, I guess, interbreeding. The Queen wants evidence of this before they'll cooperate and hand over the book that they have. It seems reasonable to not trust the Fae when the Fae have been known to be deceptive to humans, but Feyre, Nesta, and everyone are just pissed off about how the Queens won't just give in and give them what they want when they ask for it. I'm sorry. I don't care about Feyre getting what she freaking wants. You're rude, and I don't like any of you. I don't want any of you to succeed, especially when these people have a reasonable response to you based on your reputation and how you've treated them the whole time. They get back to the Fae castle and lament about not being trusted by the Queen, that Feyre being a Fae wasn't enough. Bro, did these Queens even know that Feyre was not a Fae before she was a Fae? How about, why should they trust you, especially with the way that they were treated? Not to mention, they immediately sit here talking about killing the queens and replacing them because the queens don't think that they can trust these guys. Like, yeah, I wonder why. You have a history of being antagonists to each other. Of course they're not going to trust you. And then, of course, the first thing that you do when you don't get their immediate compliance is kill them. Let's kill them. We kill them. Rysand says that they can't just steal the book anyway. The magic around it means that it has to be freely given and, quote, it might know that we're scheming. If the magic of the other place could tell that Feyre was somebody putting on a magic mask, then this book can definitely tell that you are scheming, okay? I would not consider it a might. Rysand determines that he's going to go see his father in the Nightmare Court, and Feyre also wants to go and considers being left behind to, quote, being locked in the castle. This is emotional manipulation from Feyre to be like, you need to take me or else you are abusing me just like Tamlin. Look, you're not locked in the castle just because he doesn't want to involve you in going to this place that is possibly going to traumatize you again, Feyre. This is because, like, for real, Rhysand doesn't want to take Feyre because he's worried about traumatizing her again. He knows what his dad is like. He knows what the Nightmare Court is like. And he knows what Feyre is probably going to be put through if he takes her. So he wants her to stay. But again, Feyre is manipulating. And then he is like, fine, you can come if you want. She's like, I trust you. So they're flying to the Nightmare Court when someone mentions a wingspan and says something about it relating to dick size. And then Feyre is assuring us that when she saw Rhysand naked and upset in his nightmares earlier, she definitely was not checking out his body and his eggplant, but she's feeling juicing. Like, if you were under this area, it would be rainy season. Once they get to the Nightmare Court, they dress finely and in blood red and barely covered clothing, honestly, because again, this is part of the fetish of the sexual humiliation of the showing off. Again, we had some of this in the second Pawn in the Puppet book, where Skylena was forced to wear basically BDSM submissive clothes and then was basically I think she was also fingered in public in order to show that she belonged to somebody, and that's what we're about to get into here, because in the Nightmare Court, this is necessary for you to show off that you have this person as your property, and especially in order to make Rhysand's dad respect him. Also, I just cannot believe how many times being a public whore is a kink that shows up in the book 2 of series like this. Quote, and with a tug on my wrist, he perched me on his lap, the High Lord's whore, who I'd become under the mountain, who the world expected me to be, the dangerous new pet of Mor's father would now seek to feel out. Rhys's hand slid along my bare wrist, the other running down my exposed thigh, cold. His hands were so cold I almost yelped. Also, apparently, this is arousal. Quote, my breasts tightened, becoming full and heavy, aching like what was now pooling in my core. Heat filled my face, my blood. I didn't know that tatas pulsated when you got sexually aroused. Can ladies in the chat confirm, or is that a TMI? This whole scene then just reads like Rhys sexually arousing Feyre in front of everyone while he's also talking to them because he got into the role play that they got going on. He's kissing her, just short of fingering her, as he also speaks back at all of these people. How do they not know that she is a Fae when clearly everyone else can just look at her and know that she's a Fae? Despite literally doing everything just short of PIV, Feyre still walks away going, I think Rhysand might not mean it. His dick is hard, he's whispering in your ear, talking about licking him and constantly flirting and fingering her, and we're back to, I don't know if he means it though. Even with the jealousy, where he said, hey, I think you're pretty, hey, have you noticed I keep telling you that you're pretty? I think Feyre is just, I don't want to say that she's dumb because I don't want to let her off of the responsibility of how she's mistreating everyone around her, so she doesn't actually get to be called ignorant or dumb. She's just mean, and she uses other people's emotions for her in order to control them because she wants to be the powerful queen. When Feyre finally gets off of Rhysand's lap, this dude has been making eye contact with Rhysand the whole time and calls Feyre a whore. Rhysand punishes him by breaking his arms, and then no one messes with Feyre ever again because you see what happens. Feyre and Rhysand are then sitting outside, lamenting what just happened, how Feyre was treated, and Rhysand's defense system that he just couldn't stop. Feyre yells at him to work on it so that he doesn't have outbursts like that, and he's like, quote, I will kill anyone who harms you. Rhys snarled, I will kill them, and take a damn long time doing it. He panted, go ahead, hate me, despise me for it. Ah! Taking him into the same territory as she hates Tamlin for because she says that Tamlin was acting that way and she didn't like it. And then she's still thinking that Rhysand doesn't want me. How? Back at the castle, Feyre is moping around the garden, feeling bad, waiting for Rhysand to come and find her because she feels bad about what she'd said. But she's not going to go and find him to make it better and apologize when she was the one that snapped at him. She realizes that she was jealous of Rhysand flirting with other people, and she actually wants to try to be something with him, unlike how she was with Tamlin, which isn't trying at all, but she'll have sex with him more than Rhysand. So there's that. Also, you get Feyre claiming that no one but Rysand fought Amarantha for her because screw Tamlin and everything that he did, am I right? Of course, Rysand is now avoiding her because this is the only kind of way that this author can sustain tension. As Feyre dawdles on her own, we're reminded that she is a villain. Quote, Now that we had the orb, he'd no doubt be in touch with the queens, who would no doubt waste our time just to remind us that they were important, that they, too, had power. Part of me wished that Rhys could crush their bones the way that he'd done with Kyr's the night before. I wonder why the queens don't trust Feyre and her ilk. This isn't badass. Threatening people like this doesn't make you a cool character, doesn't make you a good guy, and I constantly wonder how these people are writing stories about villains and think that they're the good guys. At least admit that they're the bad guys. She visits Amran with a meal of blood and hears Rhys went off to hunt someone somewhere. And Amran says just how amazing Rysand is and different from everyone else who has ever come before him. Also, there's a festival coming up because we need one of those as well. Back home, Feyre texts Rysand 3 more times, successfully getting more aggressive until she's berating him because he's not responding. Yeah, the progression of her texts are a lot like, an abusive asshole trying to flirt and then calling a girl a skanky bitch when she won't respond. That's Feyre. Rysand also never responds. He should just delete her number. Feyre is not getting ready for the Starfall Festival. Unfortunately, her body is back to normal just in time to fill out the dress because she had been starving herself because she is so miserable. So she was kind of not looking great. Now she is back in top form, filling out to look nice again. And apparently she also forgot what it's like to be human despite being sexual before because, quote, the neckline grazes my collarbone. The modesty of it's undone by how the gown hugged areas I supposed a female might enjoy showing off. She could dress pretty before. She dressed beautifully before. She was like, oh, I know that I'm sexy. Like a couple chapters ago when Rysand said that he was staring at her. Now she's like, well, this dress is like hugging my body in all the right ways that normal people would be super happy about, but not me, because I'm not normal people. It's always being the most perfect of perfect, but then also just being nonchalant about being perfect. Rysand is still missing. Mor talks to her about the time that she lost her virginity, which was with Cassian, which made Asriel and Rysand mad. But she wanted to bang a legendary warrior, so she went and did it. Then, since it made them so mad, she didn't want to cause a rift in their relationship and never did it again. Though Cassian still wants her. Then Rysand reappears and Mor goes away. Then people are dancing under the star shower. But okay, so on that relationship, it really doesn't make any sense for her to be like, I'm gonna bang him, I still want to bang him, he's still into me, but I don't want to do it because Rysand would be angry. Why doesn't he talk to Rysand? It seems worse to, tease him along and do this. It's so disrespectful. These books so heavily disrespect the characters. Feyre apologizes for what she'd done, and Rysand tells her not to apologize, and then apologize himself even though he didn't do anything wrong. Rysand then reveals that every year on the Starfall Festival, Amarantha would have sex with him. But he's carrying that all on his own. They bond, and she basically paints a picture of him accidentally and realizes that she can paint again. Oh wow, just magically fix that trauma without even trying because it's convenient. It's just like, oh, and now it's better. Cool. He apologizes for kissing her under the mountain because he didn't get her consent first, and then Rysand smiles and says that he's happy that he met Feyre. Feyre, being unable to reciprocate or even acknowledge anybody's feelings, goes, let's go back to the festival. So, this guy just laid it all out, his trauma, his feelings for you, being as straightforward as possible, and she's just... That's a great way to feel rejected, Feyre. They go to the camp, and then Feyre thinks about how horny she is in Rysand's arms. They talk about getting a house. Feyre learns that Rysand is training the women to fight, and Feyre and Rysand leave, where he tells her about how his mom and sister were killed by Tamlin's dad. Then, his dad killed Tamlin's dad, and again, more sympathy for Rysand, but not for Tamlin. And now, after hearing all of this trauma, she wants to paint Rysand again. He says that it's best to paint him nude. Because obviously... he just got his feelings rejected. But you know what? In a universe where your decisions don't matter and the way that you behave don't matter, then absolutely nothing can change the course of the relationship, as the author will smash the characters together regardless of what their emotional response would be to certain things. They get ready to leave for the festival and head out. Feyre is thinking about how she wants Rysand and wants to betray Tamlin. But she makes an excuse that she can't do that. And also, if she just makes it a physical thing with Rysand, then it's not really betraying Tamlin. There's no sense being made here. And while out there hunting / scouting, they run into Lucien. Lucien's trying to convince Feyre to come back to the Spring Court because Tamlin is out of control without her. Feyre keeps thinking of herself as being Tamlin's pet, not his lover. If she thinks of herself as Tamlin's pet and not his lover, then how does this show that it is some kind of betrayal if she's not with him? Because she's clearly showing like how she feels about their relationship and that she is not with him. So there is no betrayal. The only betrayal going on here is that she continues to lie to Tamlin and lead him on. She shouldn't have any qualms with being with Rysand if this is the case. Lucien and Feyre go back and forth, where it ends with Feyre screaming at Lucien about how he betrayed her trust and let her rot away due to his duty to Tamlin. She eventually threatens Lucien and scares him off. Which is also kind of weird, because isn't he like a hardened soldier of some kind? He's been through a lot, but Feyre can just scare the crap out of him. I would get it if he was just like trying to respect her and not wanting to push her too far because of who she is and how he feels about her in a platonic way, but to like scare him off, everybody is just a wimp. It's also such an insult slap in the face to Lucien for everything that he did for Feyre that she would act like this. He doesn't deserve it. Feyre and Rysand then get to a hotel. It's so small with only one bed. They can't light a fire, so they talk about warming each other with their bodies. Yeah, I feel like we're just doing forced proximity now for the kink. I don't understand the hostility Feyre has towards Rysand when she knows that she likes him. We just went over how she likes him and she wants him. It's just so forced and tiring. Now she's sitting in the room thinking about how Night Court understands consent, but the Spring Court does not, because that is clearly where we are at with showing the signs of good and evil. It is so garbage. This literally makes no sense why you set up sadistic court and guy to get this, but not the normies. He's also thinking, did he believe my lie, even if it's so unbelievable? Because she can't just say what she wants and has to make everyone guess and assume and do, and then she'll go yes if she wants it. Actually, I don't think she'll ever say yes if she wants it. She will never tell you what she wants. She wants you to guess, and then later when she's done with you, she'll say that she never wanted it. That is exactly what she does. Quote, skin to skin, the calluses of his hands made me groan as they scraped the top of my breasts and circled around my peaked nipples. I love these. He breathed onto my neck, his hand sliding to my other breast. You have no idea how much I love these. It's so cringy. It's so cringy. He finger bangs her, and she's thinking about how much she wants his dick inside of her. He's like, sleep. I can't fuck you here because I can't fuck you against the wall. The room is too small, so sleep. And Feyre just does. No nightmares, because his fingers were just so dang good. Waking up the next morning, she asks Rysand why he made the deal to have her 1 week every month, and he says to piss off Tamlin. It wasn't because he actually wanted anything about her. Feyre wonders if she dreamed the sex last night, but then knows that it wasn't a dream because he finger banged her so hard that between her legs is sore from the manhandling. Because what is control? She figures that it's probably better to pretend that it didn't happen, though. They go to practice Feyre's powers and get attacked. Rysand flings Feyre so far away that she loses him. Then she goes looking for him. His body has been dragged off, and she follows the scent. Somehow she's better at hunting and hiding than centuries-old Faye, because she is the one that finds him. Somehow she's better at hunting and fighting than century-old Faye because she doesn't have a problem with finding Rhys. He and the enemies are in a cave with Rhys pinned down and bleeding from the apparent whipping that he's been getting. She detonates, killing them without issue, and they flee. Rysand is then so weak that he can't do anything, so she takes the arrow out of him when they slow. She talks about what she painted for her and her sisters back at the house that she grew up in. She painted the night sky for herself and goes, I wonder if I knew that this was waiting for me all along. Rysand mentions the king who attacked made it so that he couldn't use his magic, which is why the bond didn't work, and then he passes out. You know, their empathetic bond that lets them talk to each other regardless of whatever. Eventually, in the woods, Feyre stumbles upon a surreal in a trap who tells her that she can save Rysand by having him drink her blood. Also, she's Rysand's mate. She gets back to the cave that Rysand is resting in and manhandles him, so he eats the root that she brought and drinks her blood. She questions how long that he's known that she is his mate, and he says that it's been since the end of Book 1 when they were on the balcony, but he didn't want to interrupt her marrying Tamlin. She's pissed now, and he's crying like, you think it didn't bother me that you just wanted me for sex? And she yells at Rysand for, how dare you decide what would be better for me, that you didn't want people to hunt me for being with you. It's not your place. I think it is Rysand's place to determine if he does or does not want to pursue her, like whether or not she is his actual mate, Rysand could still go, I don't think I want to get into that. He's not just deciding for her, he's deciding for himself. So, I mean, even if she wanted to be with him, if he was still like, no, he's not deciding for her, he's deciding for himself. So, again, Feyre is controlling. Not to mention, back when he discovered that they were mates, theoretically, Feyre was also actively saying, I love you to another man. So Rysand was doing the respectful thing by not pursuing a woman who was saying, I love you to another man. Feyre is so angry, though. She's just mad and doesn't give a crap about him anymore, because even despite him being in pain, having been attacked just now, having gone through so many I love yous or I want to be with this guys, it doesn't freaking matter. They get back to the house, and then she leaves Rysand behind in the mud because screw this guy now. She demands more, take her somewhere to think about stuff by herself because she is so angry. And, it's all just because he didn't say, hey, I knew we were mates when you were in that situation. I don't understand how or why she can be as angry as she is in this scene. She's not even been a Fae for very long. So what's it mean? What's it even matter that he didn't force himself on her when he discovered this information? It doesn't matter. Mor takes her to this family cabin that they have that is enchanted to take care of Feyre so that like all of her needs are met. The cabinets always have food. The water is always warm. It's just like basically an automated cabin where everything is taken care of. So she doesn't have to have anything that is missing. The toilets flush itself. Heated toilets with toilets that flush themselves. Like all of it. She takes a hot bath and then gets into a sweater and some leggings, as hashtag typical millennial girls do during their breakup scenes. And then she's thinking about how, since she's Rysand's mate, she's not a bad person for cheating on Tamlin because she just couldn't help it. Because, yeah, let's absolve her of her responsibility and anything. She just couldn't help it, despite how Rysand helped it the entire time. Feyre, just take responsibility. Just say that you are a terrible person. You are not justified in cheating and leading someone else on when you didn't even cut it off because you didn't feel that way from the beginning. Like, she didn't even tell Tamlin that she was not interested. It would have been fine to just tell him before the altar, but she didn't. She had multiple chances to, and she didn't. And now she's just like, well, I'm not a bad guy. She thinks about how she asked Rysand to be honest with her just after saying that she'd never walk away from him, and then she just ran off, leaving him in the mud when he had been honest with her. And she's like, oh my gosh, did I mess up? Did I tell him to be honest with me? He was honest with me, and then I was like, screw you? Oh no. She wanders around the cabin, bored, thinking about how it exposes her to a type of family that she never had. When Mor returns to check on Feyre, she's painted a large portion of the house a different color. You know, the house that she's borrowing. Yeah, she's just redecorating it. Mor says that she has permission to kill her parents at any time, and maybe someday she will. You know, because Rysand and his court are all powerful. I thought Tamlin was, but no, it's Rysand and his people that can do whatever they want without consequence, it seems. It's great having no stakes. Feyre asks if Mor has ever been with Azriel, and she says no. She's only slept with Cassian and then swore off any of Rysand's friends, even if she dances up on them and like grinds on them at parties and, you know, kind of gives them the eye. But she's like, I will grind on them, but I will not sleep with them. Feyre also determines that Rysand is probably not that bad of a mate. I didn't realize at this point that that was even a question. I thought she was just angry she didn't know that he was a mate, but she wanted him to begin with. She thinks about how when she goes back to the Night Court, she wants to open a shop to teach broken people how to paint and pay Rysand back the money that he gave her to open the shop by selling her paintings. Because, yeah, she's now determined that she wants to be a therapy painter teacher for the Fae. Randomly. This is just where we are now. It feels a lot like when Swanee in book five of His Name Was Augustin decided, I'm going to open up a shelter for abused women to try to be like, I'm a better person, I'm a good person, but this came out of nowhere. So, Feyre, sorry, this does not help you at all. She just wants the appearance of being a good person after everything that she's done that makes her a terrible person. Also, why does she even need to borrow money from Rysand when he is giving her a salary and he buys her everything that she needs, so she doesn't even have to spend any of her current salary? What is she doing with all the money that Rysand is giving her? So she's bored of her own thoughts after 5 days of sitting in a cabin alone, and fortunately enough, Rysand shows up at the house to keep her company. They make up, and apparently now we're told that Feyre can't cook. One of the first qualms at the very beginning of book 1 was that her sisters can't cook, her dad can't cook, and she has to do like everything in the house to take care of her families. But now, since Rysand is there, she's like, I can't cook. I mean, maybe she's pretending to be coy so that he'll do things for her, but like, No, she's just saying that she can't cook. Or it's the false modesty, because she's cooking and then she's like, but I can't really cook. It's not that great. While Feyre is making Rysand food, he talks about how Amarantha killed his father. Didn't he say Tamlin killed his father? And how he was cursed at the same party everyone else was cursed at, but also how he made the sex with Amarantha so good that she craved it because he wanted to torture her. So not only was he apparently sexually abused by Amarantha, but at the same time as he was a victim to Amarantha, he was also manipulating Amarantha with the sex, so he wasn't really a victim. I don't know. This book, this author and everything in this book has a tendency to make people everything and everything at once. Just everything. So there is no sense. It's just a convenience. So you can be victim sometimes, powerful other times, but you're never, like, at the disadvantage. It's just storytelling disadvantage. And it's one of the things that drives me crazy in books is the biggest victim plus the one with the most control at all times. It doesn't work. Just let your character be disadvantaged and helpless. But then if you do that, then they can't save themselves and they can't be super powerful in an impressive way to the love interest. It's terrible. As far as I'm concerned, Rysand made Amarantha his victim. I don't know why he didn't just stop being so good at sex, so she stopped demanding it, and now he just complains that she wanted sex after he did that to her. Continuing on with this conversation, Rysand retcons more stuff, saying that Clara didn't suffer. I didn't think that she'd be kidnapped. Because in book 1, when somebody asked what Feyre's name was, she said Clara. And so then Clara, from her village, was kidnapped and tortured until she died. And we were told that she was put through so much pain until she died. But now Rysand is saying that she wasn't, in order to wash Feyre's hands of doing that evil. Instead of making her reflect on, how she used other people, how she hurt other people, how her recklessness hurt other people. Nah, just say, well, it doesn't really matter. Nobody misses her and she wasn't even in pain. Wow, just wow. He says that he got her drunk every night in the dungeon and paraded her around in the nude clothing and stripping dances to save her from the trauma of what was actually happening. Yeah, Rysand is a really nice guy over here going, I sexually abused you in public multiple nights all the time in order to stop you from seeing what else was going on at the time. He's also mad at Tamlin for not trying to flee with Feyre when they had a chance to the night in the broom closet, totally neglecting that Amarantha had all of the power to begin with, and they had initially not been captured by her anyway. There was no escape. She would have hunted them down, even if they had tried to leave. This is so dumb, and to blame Tamlin for being a victim who was being held captive and didn't try to get away when he obviously couldn't get away, like, when Feyre went back to Tamlin's castle after she'd been to the human realm, he had already been grabbed by Amarantha. His house had been ransacked, he had been hunted down, and his powers were taken from him by Amarantha. What was he supposed to do? But yeah, right. Blame Tamlin, the victim. After the retconning of everything in book 1 is complete, Rysand says that he loves Feyre and she tells him to eat the soup that she made, ignoring his feelings again. After he's done eating, they have sex on the table. He gives a satisfied male smile after he tongues her to climax before some PIV. They go bathe and flirt and do dirty things some more. She doesn't believe him that he thinks that she's beautiful, and he reassures her that she's gorgeous. How, after all of this time, all of the times that he has said that she is gorgeous, and she's like, you need to do it better. Feyre, it's really just the narcissism. It's the narcissism of needing constant reassurance and constant compliments. You do know that you're pretty, you just want people to say it. Then they go to have more sex and they keep going. Rysand explains the sex frenzy that happens with mating and how it can make male phase testy and violent if there is any sort of disturbance too soon after mating. Just don't bother him when he's post-nut. That's what he's saying. Then they briefly talk about birth control because no book is apparently complete without that nowadays. Feyre is not on birth control and she's like, I'm expected to give you a child, right? And Rysand's like, bruh, you're not expected of anything, but I do want a child. But I'm also scared of my enemies being around you and you being pregnant. Feyre's got all of the powers. It's going to be fine, Rysand. We know this. She's got the greatest power of them all. Plot armor. After we've discussed this, there is more sex in the bathtub again because it is just nonstop now. Continuing on, they meet back up with the crew. Cassian makes a comment that makes Rysand beat him, and then Rysand needs to have sex with Feyre to cool down before they go to dinner. They meet with the human queens who still don't want to offer them help immediately. Nesta's pissed and yells at them for not being helpful and doing as they say. The queens leave, but one of them secretly leaves the book behind and said that she doesn't trust the others. Nesta and Elaine are offered to come and live with the fairies, and Elaine says that she needs to stay. Amren's working on cracking the code of the magic books. Rysand is off in the court of nightmares doing things. And then Feyre and him are sending naughty texts back and forth between her, just hanging out and shopping with Cassian when the city is attacked. Yeah, doesn't it feel a lot like fanfic or like self-insert, just fantasizing? They fight off the threat immediately, and then Feyre teleports away. Feyre searches for the Autor and hunts it down, kills it, and Rysand shows up. They survive and leave, and there's carnage freaking everywhere from the battle. Regrouping and going after the endgame, Amren's broken the code in the books. They leave the cabin, go back, and Feyre is thinking about how her and Tamlin had separate rooms, so she assumed that her and Rysand would also be the same when she's approached by Rysand, and he's saying that he wants to share a room with her. Whether it's his or hers, he doesn't care as long as they're sharing a room. Feyre moves into his room. He's giving her his mother's ring, but she's not going to wear it until after the endgame events so that there is no extra danger brought in. They all get to the castle to go and find the cauldron, the magical cauldron. Jurian, I have no idea who that is. The name that just appeared. It's just Jurian, this new character, appears to stop them from running off with the cauldron. Apparently, the story that they'd been told about Jurian and Miriam living on the island happily was a lie. Oh yeah, Jurian was one of those Fae that married a human and theoretically ran off to live in paradise. That was a lie. Everybody is captured and taken to another room. It looks like this guy has been working with Tamlin so he can take advantage of Tamlin's court and get more power. Feyre says that if he does anything to take her from her mate, she will destroy him and his kingdom. Does this not make her a villain now that she's actually threatening innocent people to just like destroy an entire village? Tamlin has the Queens of Earth come in, dragging Feyre's sisters with them, and he's like, yeah, you're gonna behave yourself or your sisters are gonna suffer. Feyre's over here juicing herself over what Rysand will do to keep his court safe while threatening Tamlin and all of the people that live in his court. Again, the country's people are not their king. Just go after the king, okay? But Feyre can't do that because she's a bad guy and she likes to see people suffering. Let's freaking be real. The human queens want to trade for immortality and to become Fae themselves, basically. That's what it seems like. The sisters will be shoved into the cauldron to prove that it can turn people into Fae. I don't know why you would take your enemies and shove them into a thing that is going to make them all powerful and immortal when that is what you want. But, you know, who needs to make sense? Elaine goes first, and then it's Nesta, and now they are Fae. Well, I understand doing it to make sure that you personally don't die. If your enemies survive this dip, they're stronger than before. They're stronger than you because you're not even a Fae yet. So why use enemies instead of, like, a loyal servant or something? Especially when you've got someone like Nesta, and you told me that they only survive the cauldron if they are strong-willed, and Nesta over here is giving death daggers, stares, and flipping you the bird as she goes into the cauldron. So of course she's going to survive the freaking cauldron. As you would expect, after becoming a Fae, Nesta is body-slamming Lucian away from Elaine, and he tells Elaine that she's his mate. So Lucian is now making eyes at Elaine, who is betrothed to somebody else, but like, who freaking cares? This book doesn't respect anything, especially not the readers. In one of the final acts of this book, they break the mating bond between Feyre and Rysand, and Tamlin takes Feyre's sisters. Then she's leaving with Tamlin and threatens the queens that she will kill them herself for what she did to her sisters by making them immortal and Fae. Is that because Feyre's not the only special one anymore? Now her sisters are like on the same level as her? I don't understand why she's so angry. But also, the breaking of the mating bond, again, makes me think of his name as Augustin. This is all just like one trope after another in the same thing, because you had Swanee being mated to Augustin at some point. I think it was in the second book that they were mated. They did their blood ritual and she became his mate because he drank her blood and she saw the memories and then he had her heart or whatever. Oh yeah, because they did the heart ritual at like the end of book 2. And then in like book 4, when she's supposed to marry Hans, they break the heart bond theoretically so that she can go and get married to Hans. And it's just all the same thing. It's all the same thing. Now for something a little different at nearly the end of the book, we're in Rysand's POV. They teleport away. It turns out that the mate bond wasn't broken, but some other bond was, because apparently there are like emergency other bonds, so that if somebody wants to break the mating bond, then they actually miss because they got, oh, a different heartstring has been pulled. The excuse to not save her from Tamlin now is because she said that she would destroy the spring court from the inside, and since they telepathically are connected, she says that she is safe enough, and so he's just going to help her from a distance, because Feyre is now back in the spring court, and she's going to destroy the spring court from the inside as the evil witch that she has always been. also Feyre's Rysand's equal and the High Queen of the Court, because female empowerment or something. He is no longer the king of the court just because she is powerful. He has like gotten on his knees and she is now there. Feyre is mad and wants to destroy Tamlin. Tamlin apologizes for acting inappropriately, and Feyre says that she is fine, though it's not good enough. It's too late to apologize. No redemption for Tamlin. Just anger and destruction at anything connected to him. Is she mad at Lucien? I'm not entirely sure. She's gonna have to get over it, though, if Lucien is the mate to her sister. So, there is that. But he's also a victim. It doesn't matter what anybody's been through, though. She's mad at everyone in Tamlin's court. In my opinion, Feyre has now solidified herself as the villain of this story, as somebody who is only vicious, who is only venomous, and who has no appreciation for anything that anybody does for her, including Rysand. Rysand is just a doormat that she can walk all over. Lucien is a victim that she just wants to continually step on, and she's taken advantage of every single person that has walked in front of her. Oh yeah, and the book ends with her and Lucien exchanging a look, and Lucien sees that she is lying about being happy and being okay, and everything that she says to Tamlin is a lie. And she's like, oh, he can't do anything about the danger that he knows that he's in unless he never wants to see his mate again, because I'm going to use that over him. Screw you, Lucien. And then they go inside of the castle, and that is the end. So let me know what you think. Is Feyre a villain? You know, the other thing that gets me is I see people saying that this is great. This is a great display of like trauma and distress, and no, it's not. Like her wanting to become a therapy painter suddenly, her just not eating and vomiting. No, it's not. And it's an exaggeration. It's a show, because she also doesn't act out in any sort of way that actually makes her look like she's having a PTSD. It's just whatever makes her look like a victim. This is such poor anything. So a couple of the other random notes that are outside of the rest of the story is this book continued with the repetition. The author of this series likes to repeat things, not just settings, but like when she's writing. It's one of the things that makes her books as long as they are. She goes like, I wanted to protect him, shield him, and that sort of thing happens so constantly. One of the things that I really, really hate about the way this story is positioned is that it treats living as a loving partner as if it is a losing position. And this idea that you have to be better than the man that you're with or else you're taking an L. If you are settling down, if you are the spouse to somebody, not the absolute equal like it is at the end. And I'm talking about an equal in like everything. This is really hard. It's really hard to describe it here. But even just the power has to be like your two rulers instead of being partners, instead of being companions, instead of respecting and loving and discussing things. It's more like Feyre is dominating everybody that she's with, and then she's calling it equality, or she's calling it being on equal footing, but she is making demands. And if she is not in this powerful position, then she is taking the L as the partner. And I just hate that it treats being in a loving relationship as if it is a losing position. This book also got insanely boring when it went to the Night Court, because there was just so much lollygagging, so much dragging on, so much just hanging out and basking in what it felt like the author thought was her own greatness in her own world, just going shopping, hanging out with the girls, doing all of that. Her blaming Tamlin and retroactively changing what Tamlin did to protect her in this, and all of the resentment was so over the top that it was unbelievable how hard she was gaslighting me as a reader. Like, if you could not tell how angry I got while I was rereading some of this stuff, because, well, I was re-experiencing some of this drama. Like, that's something else. So authors, there have been more than a couple of books in the last couple of years, and I think it happens more often than people realize, that the author will write something, but I'm not going to believe it just as it's written. I know that there are a lot of people and a lot of readers that will just read a book as it is written, and they will believe what the character says. But for me, when I'm reading a book, I go by what the character says, what other character says, and what I see. And that's how I determine what is a lie and what is not a lie, because a story will never tell you when the main character is lying if the character doesn't want you to know that they're lying. And I read a lot of books that have an unreliable narrator, so I can't just trust what the character says. And so then when I'm given a book like this, or I'm given a book like, his name was Augustin, And then I'm looking at all of the elements and how characters are acting and what is being represented, especially when it's in first person. I'm going to doubt what the character is saying or reading, because I also write unreliable narrators that either don't understand what's happening around them, have misinterpretations of what's happening around them because they're either angry or they lack information or whatever. And so then when I'm reading stuff like this, I can't just believe. But this thing sort of requires you to, one, read it quickly, and two, just believe whatever Feyre tells you and not judge it based on anything in the past. However, if you look at her actions, if you look at the way other people think, if you look at the way even what happened with Tamlin, you'll see that she is lying. Because she wants to go on and on and on about all of the torture that she and Rysand went through. But she ignores that from Tamlin's perspective, this whole thing is he fell in love with her when he brought her to his place after she killed his friend, mind you. She's not even thinking about how she killed his friend. She feels no guilt about how she killed his friend in absolute malice. She never reflects on that. She's hated Tamlin since day one before she even met him. So she killed the friend. Never apologized, never reflected on it, never felt guilty. That guy deserved it, according to her. Tamlin slowly fell in love with her for whatever reason. And then when he realized that she didn't love him back because he was going to send her home since the curse due date was coming up, right? He sent her back to her village so that would keep her safe, knowing that he was going to be collected by Amarantha after 50 years of already being oppressed by her. But now he was going to be immediately underneath her. So he sent her away to protect her. He got kidnapped by Amarantha. And then Feyre decided, you know what? She wants to go and see what's happening with Tamlin and doesn't want him to fight this alone. So she gets there, sees that his place was destroyed, sees that he was captured by Amarantha, decides that she wants to go and face a Fae as a human, knowing that she is going to be so overpowered. She dies in front of him after he has already experienced her being abused, his being abused underneath her. Amarantha was abusing and killing Feyre and killing other humans, mind you, while he was there. And so then he wants to protect her because he watched her die. He watched other people die. He knows what he's going through. He knows what she's going through, and she's more sensitive because she's got a human heart. So he thinks that he's protecting her. And she has been abused constantly for those 3 months that they were at the under the mountain thing. He watched Rysand abuse her in the way that Amarantha had theoretically been abusing Rysand, had theoretically been wanting to abuse Tamlin, so he saw her getting that. And he just wanted to protect her. So then they get back to the house, and after everything is over, and Feyre is saying, I love you, and they're both suffering from post-traumatic stress because they both just went through something massive. And he is trying to recover, he is trying to take care of his kingdom in the best way that he can, and she is just angry, not talking to him about anything. And so he thinks, you know, she's just trying to deal with it the best she can deal with it because he's also not talking about his thing. So maybe he thinks that she has the same coping mechanism. She's resenting him the whole time. Well, then suddenly, after, you know, months of setting up for the wedding and getting ready and asking her if she really wants to get married, she says yes. And so then they're going down the aisle, and then Rysand shows up and kidnaps her. And that's what it looks like to him, is she has been kidnapped. She is being tortured by this guy that abused her under the mountain. And all of this time where Tamlin is just worried about her, she is resenting him. Now, did he act appropriately in locking her up? No, not necessarily. But you have to see why he is acting the way that he is from what is the perspective that he has with the information that he has. But Feyre is painting him with all of the evil intentions that she possibly can. And it's inaccurate. And then she's talking about how much she wants to hurt every other person. Every person that doesn't comply with her, she wants to kill. She wants to maim. She wants to beat into submission because she is a power-thirsty villainess. Well, she also victimizes herself in every single case. And I think that's to try and justify or make her feel more relatable when she's actually being an evil queen. There's also so much trauma dumping in this story because this story uses trauma and like ranting about trauma as a means to try to manipulate the reader into feeling bad. And so they're like, well, this guy might be bad, but also look at the bad things that happened to him. That doesn't work at all. This is another case for me, and I think I said it earlier in the review, but this is another case for me of where it feels like a writer who doesn't know how to write a relationship that is actually active and then build a story around a relationship that is contained, that is not about sex, or that a relationship that is established but that is not about sex. How to create tension that is outside of the relationship, and then have those people work as a team. Because this whole thing, so much of this book is Feyre bouncing back and forth on Rysand and Tamlin, and does he really love me, even though he said that I'm hot, even though he says that he's into me, even though we constantly are getting jealous? It's just, so much of this book should have been cut down in half, because it's so much repetition. And that's what a lot of these books do, like Guns and Smoke. Her constantly pushing to be taken into the Nightmare Court and all of these other dangerous missions when she's also suffering from PTSD, and also pretending she has PTSD from killing those Fae in that one place, but then also everywhere she goes she's talking about killing people, also doesn't work. Again, poor everything. Nothing is consistent in here. The last thing to really mention is why we're even here, which is, as this book was on the ALA's challenge book list for 2022. Does this belong in schools? I don't think so. Why? Because it is just really bad literature. I would say it does not belong in schools for the same reason that Colleen Hoover does not belong in schools. And yes, I recently saw a book list for a school district. It was like Kentucky or Idaho or something, where there were like 5 Colleen Hoover books on that list for removing from school districts. And let's just say Colleen Hoover probably does not need to be in school libraries. I mean, do you want to make an argument for why Colleen Hoover should be in school libraries? Feel free to let me know. But what are your thoughts down in the comments below? Have you read A Court of Mist and Fury? Will you read A Court of Mist and Fury? Do you want to be a Court of Mist and Fury like I am freaking right now? We've made it. Hopefully the 3rd book is not on the ALA's list, because I don't want to keep reading these characters. I hate them so much. That said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend, and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross. Is he in trouble? We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?